complex times, and for organizing the meeting of the Ministerial Council, which is for the first time since the establishment of the OSCE held in a virtual format due to specific circumstances dictated by the pandemic. At a time fraught with political challenges, additionally burdened by unprecedented economic and social consequences brought about by COVID-19 pandemic, it is clear more than ever before how necessary it is to strengthen cooperation, understanding, solidarity, and multilateralism. In that context, Serbia firmly believes that despite the well-known differences of opinion and at times strongly opposed views, the functioning of the organization and its institutions should be our primary goal. We therefore welcome the consensus reached on the appointment of highly qualified individuals to steer the OSCE Secretariat and its autonomous institutions. Strong and autonomous institutions with professional and able staff at the helm play an important role in safeguarding and implementing the OSCE norms and principles as an integral part of the concept of comprehensive security, and they assist the participating states to overcome the challenges posed before our organization due to the present-day situation we live in. I would like to stress that this is an obligation of all of us in a year which is in many respects symbolic. This year, we observe the 75th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, which continues to be a lesson for the future. As a representative from a country which has undergone untold suffering during these tragic ordeals, whose consequences have not been fully healed even today, I have special responsibility and obligation to underline that the horrors of the Second World War should never be repeated in any form. This year, we also marked the anniversaries of the adoption of major OSCE documents, those that laid in the foundations not only of our organization, but also contributed to shaping up the international order created after the Second World War. In addition to the anniversary of the Charter of Paris and the Astana commemorative declaration, this year we also observed as 45th anniversary of Helsinki Final Act, which defined 10 basic principles regulating the relations among states, such as equality of states, respect for territorial integrity and sovereignty of states, inviolability of internationally recognized borders, peaceful settlement of disputes through mutually acceptable solutions. Unfortunately, the events that followed, primarily the violation of the territorial integrity of participating states by the use of force, the violation of internationally recognized borders of the Republic of Serbia, is a glaring example. Serve as a reminder that the crises and misunderstandings in the OSCE territory emerged in the wake of selective implementation and failure to honor the basic principles and norms of the Helsinki Final Act. That is why all states need to redouble efforts to restore and return to the original principles and norms upon which our organization rests. In addition to the challenges facing the OSCE, extraordinary and unforeseen circumstances caused by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic additionally complicated the organization's work and functioning of the OSCE mission on the ground. Having said this, I have in mind that human dimension implementation meetings have not been held this year, one of the major forums on human rights and an opportunity for open dialogue among participating states and representatives of civil society on key challenges we face as we implement the obligations undertaken in the field of human dimension. The Republic of Serbia supports peaceful resolution of all conflicts in the OSCE region. We commend the encouraging initial steps towards the stabilization and resolution of the crisis in and around Ukraine, reflected in truce signing on 27 July this year. We share the views voiced by many today who stressed the importance of this progress, at the same time fully committed to the principles and obligations on the OSCE. We are heartened by the progress and promotion of this positive process based on the Minsk Agreement and hope that these positive developments will have a positive effect on other crises in the OSCE area. Despite the positive changes, this crisis continues to affect the civilian population, and our common task and goal should be to put an end on their plight. The Republic of Serbia continues to strongly support the work of the Special Monitoring Mission in Ukraine, particularly in the specific circumstances brought about by the pandemic, and calls upon both sides to enable freedom of movement and ensure security to all minorities on the ground. We welcome the cessation of hostiles and reaching of the ceasefire agreement in Nagorno-Karabakh facilitated by Russia. Serbia deeply sympathizes with all victims in this conflict, and in particular with innocent civilians. We hope that the arrangement will put an end to further loss of life and plight of civilian population, which has already suffered beyond endurance in the wake of the crisis escalation. Allow me now to briefly touch upon the situation in Western Balkans, which has been affected by stagnation of the EU enlargement process. Despite the ongoing difficulties and dilemmas within the European Union, Serbia is fully committed to the European integration and regional cooperation. We consider that only with compromise and flexibility, coupled with readiness to acknowledge the interests of others and not just one's own, it is possible to reach lasting and sustainable solution on the region's problems. This year behind us has also seen the resumption of the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue, stalemated for almost 2 years due to Pristina's unilateral decision to impose tariffs on products from central Serbia. Serbia has been absolutely committed to and in good faith approached the renewed dialogue. However, true progress is not possible unless previously undertaken obligations from 2013 Brussels Agreement are fully implemented. This primarily refers to the implementation of the part of the agreement dealing with the establishment of the community of Serb municipalities, which would provide institutional protection to Serb community in Kosovo and Metohija, and an obligation that Pristina refused to implement in the past 7 years. I would like to stress that this part of the agreement is actually taking even more than 40% of the agreement at all. In that context, Serbia expects that the states primarily interested in the success of the future dialogue and with whose facilitation it is being held exert a clear, unambiguous, and decisive influence on the Pristina authorities to finally and without delay honor this obligation. In the end, allow me to extend best wishes and support to Sweden and its Minister Ann Linde, as well as Poland after them, for taking over the chairmanship of the organization at a sensitive time. We support the adoption of the decision on the chairmanship of the organization in 2023 by our neighbor, the Republic of North Macedonia. Thank you for your attention.
I thank Minister Selakovic. Now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Turkmenistan, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Rashid Meredov. Mr. Minister, the floor is yours.
Спасибо большое, уважаемый господин председатель, дамы и господа. Прежде всего, я хотел бы выразить благодарность албанскому председательству за организацию нынешнего заседания Совета министров ОБСЕ. Уважаемые коллеги, этот год стал испытанием для всех нас, своего рода проверкой на прочность нашего сотрудничества, способности в кризисной ситуации проявлять сплоченность и солидарность, умение консолидировать усилия в противодействии различного рода рискам. Пандемия коронавируса нового типа поистине явилась глобальным вызовом, требующим такого же глобального ответа. А в этом контексте многие государства, так же как и международные организации, несмотря на возникшие трудности социального, экономического, гуманитарного, если хотите, логистического характера, проявили твердую волю и решимость в борьбе с возникшей глобальной угрозой. Одновременно мы видим, что последствия пандемии, к сожалению, имеют масштабный характер и проявляются во многих сферах внутренней жизни государств и международной деятельности. В первую очередь это относится к области безопасности, являющейся безусловным приоритетом в работе ОБСЕ. Концептуальные подходы Туркменистана к обеспечению безопасности и стабильности были сформулированы в официальных заявлениях президента Туркменистана господина Гурбангулы Бердымухамедова на нескольких форумах ООН, ОБСЕ и других международных организаций. Их основу составляет принцип целостности и неделимости безопасности, означающий для нас неразрывность и взаимообусловленность таких ее элементов, как политическая, экономическая, продовольственная, экологическая и другие виды безопасности. Именно поэтому, а также анализируя негативное влияние пандемии на уровень и состояние безопасности в мире, считаем целесообразным поставить вопрос о возможности подготовки единой стратегии ОБСЕ в области безопасности. В контексте обеспечения безопасности актуальным вопросом совместной работы в рамках ОБСЕ считаем необходимость активизации структурированного диалога по предотвращению конфликтов. Одним из путей достижения этой цели является восстановление доверия в международной политике. В сентябре прошлого года Генеральная ассамблея Организации Объединенных Наций по инициативе Туркменистана приняла резолюцию об объявлении 2021 года Международным годом мира и доверия. В целях выполнения положения этого документа Туркменистан выступает с инициативой проведения в следующем году Международного форума мира и доверия. Господин председатель, в этом году наша страна отмечает знаменательную дату в своей истории, 25-ю годовщину с момента признания 12 декабря 1995 года Генеральной Ассамблеей Организации Объединенных Наций статуса постоянного нейтралитета Туркменистана. В феврале 2017 года Генассамблея ООН единогласно при соавторстве значительного числа государств-членов провозгласила 12 декабря Международным днем нейтралитета. В своем выступлении на 75-й сессии Генеральной Ассамблеи президент Туркменистана подчеркнул, что нейтралитет Туркменистана – это призыв и создание условий для равноправного, уважительного, взаимовыгодного международного партнерства в политике, экономике, в деле защиты окружающей среды, в обеспечении всеобщей продовольственной безопасности, справедливого и эффективного распределения природных ресурсов планеты, поддержки и помощи беженцам, мигрантам и лицам без гражданства для решения многих других актуальных проблем современного мира. В этом контексте Туркменистан выступает за создание новых международно-правовых механизмов, ориентированных на практическое применение принципов нейтралитета при разрешении различных международных вопросов. Уважаемые коллеги, мы убеждены, что сотрудничество в рамках ОБСЕ должно способствовать формированию единого вектора в нашей деятельности, основанного на балансе интересов и обеспечении взаимных прав и возможностей. Именно с этих позиций Туркменистан подходит к обсуждению и согласованию мер, нацеленных на решение актуальных проблем в регионах Центральной Азии и Каспийского моря. Эти регионы на современном этапе выдвинулись в центр внимания международной политики. Во многом это связано с наличием мощного энергоресурсного потенциала наших стран, их выгодным геоэкономическим расположением, а также колоссальными возможностями в развитии транспортно-коммуникационных коридоров. В этой связи энергетическая составляющая является одним из главных направлений сотрудничества между Туркменистаном и ОБСЕ. Между тем, развитие транспорта сегодня также стало важным фактором геополитики, мощным интеграционным ресурсом, способным обеспечить большие экономические и политические преференции государствам и регионам. В контексте дальнейшего совершенствования деятельности ОБСЕ в вышеуказанных сферах считаем целесообразным вернуться к ранее выдвинутым туркменской стороной предложениям о создании таких специализированных структур ОБСЕ, как Совет по устойчивой энергетике и Комиссия по транспортной политике. Особую актуальность в настоящее время обретает природоохранная тематика и вопросы изменения климата. В этой связи и в целях повышения уровня системности при рассмотрении и решении экологических проблем предлагаем изучить возможность подготовки комплексной экологической программы ОБСЕ, которая могла бы стать хорошей современной основой для разработки конкретных проектов в области охраны и рационального использования недр, земельных и водных ресурсов в странах-участницах ОБСЕ. Уважаемые коллеги, гуманитарное измерение всегда было и остается одним из главных направлений в деятельности Организации по безопасности и сотрудничеству в Европе. Залогом ее эффективности в настоящее время и в будущем видится более высокий уровень взаимного понимания между государствами и участниками. Все мы исповедуем общие ценности, основанные на идеалах мира, гуманизма и справедливости. Их практическая имплементация во многом зависит от внимательного и взаимоуважительного отношения стран-участниц организации к истории, культуре и менталитету народов каждого из государств. Предлагаем рассмотреть возможность разработки долгосрочной платформы действий ОБСЕ в гуманитарном измерении, включающей в себя наиболее значимые компоненты коллективной работы в этой важной сфере ответственности нашей организации. Уважаемый господин председатель, уважаемые коллеги, Туркменистан открыт для партнерства с ОБСЕ и всеми государствами-участниками организации по самому широкому спектру направлений. Наша страна будет и далее прилагать все усилия для утверждения принципов международного права, идеалов гуманизма, справедливости, толерантности, взаимного уважения в качестве факторов, определяющих современные отношения между государствами. В заключение хотел бы адресовать слова искренней благодарности албанскому председательству за организацию работы в текущем году, а также пожелать нашим коллегам из Швеции успешной работы на посту председателя ОБСЕ в 2021 году. Благодарю вас за внимание.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Now I give the floor to the next speaker on my list, representative of Italy, Deputy Minister Marina Sereni. Madam, you have the floor.
Grazie Presidente, signor Presidente, care colleghe e cari colleghi. Mi congratulo con il Presidente in esercizio, il Primo Ministro Edi Rama, per lo straordinario lavoro svolto in un anno complesso e auguro ogni successo alla prossima Presidenza svedese. 30 anni fa la Carta di Parigi ha anticipato l'avvio di un'era di pace e sicurezza per l'Europa. Oggi più che mai, nel quadro di una pandemia e di preoccupanti scenari di sicurezza, dobbiamo interrogarci su come rivitalizzare lo spirito di Helsinki, poiché il deteriorarsi delle condizioni di dialogo sui grandi temi dell'organizzazione impone anzitutto uno sforzo di ricostruzione della fiducia. Da ormai 6 anni l'OSCE promuove l'obiettivo di una soluzione stabile e duratura della crisi ucraina, mediante la missione speciale di monitoraggio e il gruppo trilaterale di contatto. Nell'ultimo anno abbiamo registrato segnali positivi per uno sbocco politico alla crisi. Auspichiamo che attraverso il dialogo politico nel gruppo trilaterale di contatto si possa costruire un percorso negoziale verso una soluzione che veda tutte le parti dare piena applicazione agli accordi di Minsk, nel rispetto della sovranità e dell'integrità territoriale ucraina. L'OSCE resta un attore fondamentale nel promuovere soluzioni politiche anche ai cosiddetti conflitti protratti. Abbiamo assistito con dolore al dramma della guerra in Nagorno-Karabakh e abbiamo accolto con sollievo il cessate il fuoco. C'è ora da affrontare un'emergenza umanitaria con il contributo di tutti. L'Italia sta già facendo la sua parte. Auspichiamo che le intese raggiunte possano creare le premesse per una stabilizzazione e pacificazione dell'area, per cui sarà decisivo il ruolo dell'OSCE. L'Italia conferma inoltre l'impegno per la composizione negoziale delle crisi in Georgia e in Transnistria. In questo quadro in evoluzione, dinanzi alle sfide poste al multilateralismo, siamo preoccupati per la progressiva erosione dell'architettura di sicurezza europea. L'impianto generale del controllo degli armamenti convenzionali in Europa, ereditato dalla fine della guerra fredda, si è fortemente indebolito. Dobbiamo assicurare la piena attuazione dei relativi accordi, tra cui il Trattato Cieli Aperti. È inoltre urgente aggiornare gli strumenti di controllo di armamenti convenzionali, oltre che le misure di fiducia e trasparenza, avviando un negoziato costruttivo per ammodernare il documento di Vienna. Care colleghe e cari colleghi, soluzioni unilaterali o nazionali in situazioni complesse si sono dimostrate inefficaci. La pandemia da Covid-19 ha alimentato una nuova consapevolezza sull'esigenza di un approccio multilaterale e cooperativo per contrastare le sfide alla sicurezza comune. E questo vale anche per la dimensione economico-ambientale. Non possiamo ignorare il nesso sempre più stretto tra sicurezza e clima, che si riflette anche sulla stabilità nel Mediterraneo, come sta emergendo anche dalle discussioni di questi giorni alla 6ª edizione dei Med Dialogues che l'Italia ha organizzato quest'anno in modalità virtuale. Clima, migrazioni e sviluppo sostenibile devono divenire prioritari anche nella cooperazione con i nostri partners della sponda sud del Mediterraneo. Si tratta di filoni di collaborazione su cui siamo pronti a continuare a lavorare. L'OSCE è anche un modello di successo nel mettere in campo risposte cooperative contro le minacce transnazionali quali terrorismo ed estremismo violento, attacchi cibernetici, corruzione, crimine organizzato, tratta di esseri umani, traffici illeciti, incluso quello dei beni culturali. In particolare abbiamo molto apprezzato l'attenzione dedicata dalla Presidenza dell'Albania nei confronti del contrasto alla corruzione e al crimine organizzato nell'anno del 20° anniversario della Convenzione di Palermo. Si tratta di fenomeni che hanno un impatto drammatico in particolare sulle fasce sociali più vulnerabili. In questo quadro siamo convinti che l'inclusione delle donne contribuisca alla migliore efficacia delle politiche di sicurezza, Per questo l'Italia ritiene fondamentale promuovere prospettive di genere in tutte e tre le dimensioni dell'OSCE. Di queste, la terza dimensione, la dimensione umana, continua a rappresentare un pilastro dell'architettura di sicurezza europea e un principio fondante dell'organizzazione. L'esperienza OSCE nel monitoraggio elettorale, che ha beneficiato anche del contributo italiano, resta uno strumento prezioso e da tutelare. Vorrei ricordare in questo ambito anche il sostegno italiano all'offerta dell'OSCE di facilitazione del dialogo tra governo e opposizione in Bielorussia e ribadire la nostra preoccupazione per la repressione in corso nel Paese e i rischi di destabilizzazione regionale. Il rilancio degli strumenti di sicurezza cooperativa nella regione, così come lo abbiamo descritto sin qui, richiede certamente risorse adeguate. Rivolgo quindi un appello all'adozione tempestiva del bilancio dell'organizzazione e ad un confronto costruttivo sulla riforma in senso più equo delle scale di contribuzione. Desidero infine rallegrarmi per l'eccellente lavoro svolto dalla Presidenza albanese per consentire il rinnovo consensuale delle cariche apicali dell'organizzazione. In questo modo ridaremo vita insieme al vento di Helsinki. Grazie per l'attenzione.
Madam Deputy Minister, thank you very much for your contribution. I will have to apologize for leaving this session soon. I will pass the screen to my deputy, the State Secretary Ingrid Brodskova. She will continue chairing the session after the next speaker. I now would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United States, Deputy Secretary of State, Mr. Steve Biegun. Mr. Biegun, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today with Ambassador Gilmore and representing the United States of America and Secretary Pompeo as we begin this important conference. This year, we mark the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, the 45th anniversary of the Helsinki Final Act, and the 30th anniversary of the Charter of Paris. Over this period, millions of people in our region realized their hopes for liberty, prosperity, and peace. As we look across the OSCE region today, however, we still see many places where these aspirations are far from being fulfilled. That is especially true in places where governments do not uphold their Helsinki commitments. The most egregious violation of sovereignty and territorial integrity within the OSCE area remains Russia's continued aggression in eastern Ukraine and the occupation of Crimea. Since 2014, the conflict has killed over 13,000 Ukrainian citizens and driven more than 1 million from their homes. Crimean Tatars, ethnic Ukrainians, and others opposed to the occupation still face cruel repression. Ukraine must remain at the top of our agenda. It's unacceptable that the Special Monitoring Mission faces daily repression, harassment, and restrictions, largely in the Russian-controlled areas. Nobody is deceived by Moscow's insistence that Ukraine is responsible for the conflict on its own territory. Russia's actions in Ukraine and elsewhere, its flagrant disregard for international law and for the OSCE's founding principles, have caused broad deterioration of European security across the continent. The United States calls upon Russia to implement fully its Minsk commitments. We will never recognize Russia's annexation of Crimea. Moscow's forces are also deployed in Moldova and Georgia without host nation consent. Russia's use of disinformation and other hybrid methods is an omnipresent challenge to all of our countries as Moscow seeks to undermine the democratic principles of other states. Meanwhile, at home, Moscow continues to violate the human rights and fundamental freedoms of its own people, including through recent efforts to clamp down on freedom of expression and expanding the scope of so-called foreign agent rules, rendering individual journalists vulnerable to designation and increasing censorship. But the challenges to the OSCE principles do not come exclusively from Russia. Since August, OSCE commitments have been broken repeatedly and human rights brutally violated in Belarus. The widespread violations and abuses documented in the Moscow Mechanism report continue to this day. More than 100 political prisoners are detained in Belarus for exercising their rights and fundamental freedoms. The Moscow Mechanism report rightly called on Belarusian authorities to cease their crackdown and heed the demands of the Belarusian people for free and fair elections under independent observation. The authorities must release political prisoners, journalists, and all those unjustly detained. They must engage in meaningful dialogue with the Coordination Council and Belarusian civil society. Elsewhere in the OSCE region, we urge the governments of Armenia and Azerbaijan to resume their work with the Minsk Group co-chairs to reach a lasting and peaceful resolution of Nagorno-Karabakh. This dispute will not be resolved on the battlefield. We welcome the cessation of hostilities, but this is only a first step. Any enduring solution must be based upon the principles of the Helsinki Final Act. The perils of conflicts in the region to combatants and civilians alike have been compounded by the pandemic, which has taken a terrible toll on all of our societies and impacted all three OSCE dimensions. It has exacerbated suffering in conflict areas, complicated monitoring efforts, and impeded arms control verification. The economic impact has been extraordinary. In the human dimension, we have witnessed tremendous resourcefulness from civil society actors finding ways to overcome obstacles to make their voices heard. Yet some governments are using COVID-19 as cover for cracking down on civil society and independent media, further restricting public access to information and undermining the rule of law. The number of political prisoners in the OSCE region unfortunately continues to grow. Anti-Semitism, anti-Roma racism, and other forms of hatred are on the rise. Members of racial, ethnic, and religious minorities, as well as vulnerable populations such as LGBTI individuals, are targets of hate crimes. We must shine a light on these abuses wherever they occur. Promoting human dignity and security and prosperity throughout Europe and Eurasia remains a vital interest of the United States, and the OSCE remains the indispensable institution in advancing this mission. Respect for the foundational principles of this organization are essential to achieving those goals. Ministers, the OSCE's comprehensive approach to security and its ambitions in all three of its dimensions have never been more important. My government hoped we'd be able to adopt a strong, substantive decision in all three dimensions at this meeting. We've made progress. Notably, the Ministerial Council will take up a decision that, if adopted, will set out important commitments on the prohibition of torture. We also hope it will be possible to agree on a decision to combat trafficking in wildlife and wildlife products. But there is so much more to do. In the coming year, we should work to update the Vienna document to enhance military transparency, share the best practices as we recover from the impacts of the pandemic, and push for further work on economic and environmental issues. We must press governments to uphold their human dimension commitments, give audience to the voices of civil society, and hold a human dimension implementation meeting in 2021, where governments are called to account for their actions. I'm very pleased that we are poised to appoint a strong new slate of leaders at this Ministerial Council meeting to carry on the work, including the new Secretary General, my friend Helga Schmidt. The challenges we face demand strong leadership. The United States stands ready to support all of these leaders. We also congratulate North Macedonia on its pending selection as the OSCE chair for 2023, following Poland's chairmanship in 2022. Finally, let me give heartfelt thanks for the tremendous leadership of Prime Minister Edi Rama of Albania, for his principled leadership on behalf of Albania under extraordinarily difficult circumstances that have challenged all of the members of the OSCE. My government will give its full support to the Swedish chairmanship as it takes up the OSCE's agenda in 2021, and we look forward to a robust agenda in the year to come. Thank you very much.
We can't hear you, madam.
Thank you. Sorry. So once more, now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Cyprus, His Excellency Nikos Christodoulides. You have the floor, sir.
Madam Chair, dear colleagues, this year, as we mark the 45th anniversary of the Helsinki Final Act and the 30th of the Paris Charter, we also become cognizant of the need to redouble our efforts towards implementing our OSCE commitments. Addressing the institutional impasse in the OSCE is an essential prerequisite for the organization if it is to be successful in achieving its important mandate and potential. I therefore express our support to the Albanian chairmanship for its work and look forward to the swift adoption of the relevant ministerial decisions on the 4 top OSCE leadership positions. Dear colleagues, Cyprus fully shares the objective of the Albanian chairmanship to work in implementing together in good faith the encompassing set of our political commitments. Threats and challenges to the security of our societies have become more complex and diverse and require a collective response. The OSCE has the toolbox and mechanisms, but what is actually needed is political will in order to make more effective use of the OSCE tools. We must therefore uphold and implement in a non-selective and non-discriminatory manner all OSCE principles and commitments, always with full respect to international law and to ensure respect of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all participating states. For Cyprus, this is imperative. Security is at the core of the OSCE, encapsulating its multifaceted nature and aims, from democratization to arms control, from economic cooperation to environmental issues. Increased dialogue, cooperation, and effective multilateralism are the only viable options. I'm confident in that regard that during this Council we will adopt important decisions across the 3 OSCE dimensions. 3 dimensions which will further enhance the OSCE's role for the benefit of all participating states. Dear colleagues, the current COVID-19 pandemic poses a significant challenge to the security, safety, and well-being of our citizens and societies. No country can effectively tackle the pandemic alone. The adoption of the Ministerial Declaration on COVID-19 will send a positive signal on the ability of all participating states to work together on this challenge. The efforts in response to the global health crisis should not have disproportionate repercussions on the enjoyment of human rights. While we adopt the necessary measures to protect public health and the right to life, we should not impose unnecessary restrictions to other human rights and fundamental freedoms. Preventive measures should be proportionate, temporary, and in full compliance with the rule of law and international commitments. Unfortunately, the pandemic has also exacerbated pre-existing inequalities and vulnerabilities within our societies, including in relation to trafficking in human beings. 2020 marks the 20th anniversary of the Protocol of Prevent, Suppress, and Punish Trafficking in Persons, especially women and children, known as the Palermo Protocol. On this anniversary, Cyprus reaffirms its commitment to continue actively supporting actions and initiatives in multilateral fora, including within the OSCE, to combat the scourge, and will welcome the adoption of the decision on this matter. Cyprus also pays particular attention to gender equality. To this end, we have undertaken relevant actions and initiatives at regional and international level. I therefore strongly support the focus of mainstreaming and gender perspective in all OSCE activities, and take positive note that gender balance was also taken into account in relation to the 4 OSCE leadership positions. Dear colleagues, multilateralism is an indispensable tool in the global system, and it should be strengthened. Cooperation with our OSCE partners countries should remain a priority. As a Mediterranean country, Cyprus wishes to particularly emphasize the importance of continued cooperation with our Mediterranean partners, as acknowledged by the Helsinki Final Act and affirmed more recently through the Milan Declaration on Security and Cooperation in the Mediterranean. The security of the OSCE area is inextricably linked to that of the Mediterranean region. Towards this end, Cyprus supports a number of proposals aiming to implement the Milan Declaration. We commend the Albanian chairmanship for implementing some of these concrete proposals. Dear colleagues, the OSCE continues to play a vital role in the crisis in and around Ukraine. Cyprus reiterates its support to the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of Ukraine and the overall efforts of the normative format and the trilateral contact group. Cyprus also welcomes the cessation of hostilities in and around Nagorno-Karabakh following the ceasefire of November 9. The cessation of the hostilities is only a first step to end the long-standing Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Efforts need to be renewed for a negotiated, comprehensive, and sustainable settlement of the conflict, including the status of Nagorno-Karabakh. I also take this opportunity to express support to the OSCE's ongoing efforts for finding lasting settlements to the protracted conflicts in Moldova and in Georgia within the agreed formats. Dear colleagues, in concluding, I wish to welcome the adoption of the decision of the OSCE chairmanship by the Republic of North Macedonia in 2023, and to reiterate our gratitude to this year's Albanian chairmanship and to Prime Minister Rama for all their efforts in leading the OSCE during this very difficult year. Thank you very much.
I thank His Excellency Nikos Christodoulides, and now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Belgium, Her Excellency Sophie Wilms. You have the floor, Madam.
Monsieur le Président, Vos Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, c'est un honneur de m'adresser à vous aujourd'hui depuis Bruxelles. Je tiens à remercier explicitement notre collègue Edi Rama pour le professionnalisme, la patience et la flexibilité dont la présidence albanaise a fait preuve dans l'organisation de ce Conseil ministériel de l'OSCE. Je voudrais également féliciter le président en exercice et son équipe pour leur travail acharné, leur persévérance qui a facilité le consensus autour de la nomination du nouveau leadership dont l'organisation a besoin afin d'aller de l'avant en privilégiant les équilibres nécessaires au consensus de notre décision, mais aussi en évitant un séquençage des décisions qui risqueraient de retarder la décision sur l'une des fonctions clés de l'organisation. 2020 restera dans nos mémoires comme une année difficile. La pandémie de Covid-19 nous a pris par surprise et nous sommes maintenant tous confrontés ensemble à une crise sans précédent. Cependant, dans ces circonstances particulières, la Belgique continue de reconnaître la valeur de l'OSCE en tant que forum de dialogue essentiel. Compte tenu des défis sanitaires et sécuritaires actuels, la pertinence de l'OSCE est incontestable. Je souhaiterais aborder 3 points. Tout d'abord, la nécessité d'un dialogue constructif sur notre architecture de sécurité commune. La Belgique a eu l'honneur de présider la conférence d'examen du traité ciel ouvert au début du mois d'octobre. Pendant 3 jours, nous avons examiné les opportunités et les défis du traité ciel ouvert lors de débats constructifs et francs entre les États parties. L'adoption du document final fut un signal clair de notre volonté commune de regarder vers l'avenir et de notre engagement conjoint à continuer de mettre en œuvre le traité ciel ouvert, pierre angulaire de l'architecture de sécurité européenne. Nous remercions la présidence espagnole du groupe de travail informel dédié au dialogue structuré pour ses efforts au cours de l'année écoulée. Le dialogue structuré reste tout aussi pertinent aujourd'hui qu'il l'était en 2016 et il continue de servir de forum pour des discussions utiles sur des sujets d'intérêt mutuel liés à la sécurité, tant au niveau politique qu'au niveau des experts. Mon deuxième point concerne le rôle important que joue l'OSCE dans différents conflits en cours, de préférence pour prévenir ces conflits et quand c'est nécessaire pour contribuer activement aux pas concrets utiles à leur résolution. La Belgique salue la cessation des hostilités au Haut-Karabakh. Nous restons cependant préoccupés par l'impact humanitaire des récentes violences. Un règlement durable doit maintenant suivre, y compris sur le statut futur du Haut-Karabakh. La Belgique confirme son soutien au groupe de Minsk et espère qu'il puisse reprendre son travail important. La Belgique salue les initiatives du président ukrainien Zelensky afin d'encourager le dialogue avec la Fédération de Russie. Nous sommes pleinement conscients du fait que les défis restent nombreux, mais il y a aussi des points positifs. Le cessez-le-feu dans la région du Donbass est respecté depuis plus de 100 jours maintenant. La mise en œuvre intégrale des accords de Minsk reste une priorité et il est crucial que toutes les parties se tiennent à cet engagement. La Belgique réitère son plein soutien à l'intégrité territoriale et à la souveraineté de l'Ukraine à l'intérieur de ses frontières internationalement reconnues. La Belgique continue aussi de soutenir pleinement le travail assidu de la mission spéciale d'observation en Ukraine. Nous mobilisons d'ailleurs à cette fin du personnel et avons engagé au mois d'août des fonds supplémentaires. Afin de mener à bien son travail, il est essentiel que la mission ait un accès sûr, sécurisé, inconditionnel et sans restriction à l'ensemble du territoire de l'Ukraine, en ce compris à la République autonome de Crimée, illégalement annexée, et à la ville de Sébastopol, ainsi qu'à la frontière entre l'Ukraine et la Russie. Les différentes tentatives d'entraver le travail de la mission sont à déplorer et les auteurs de ces actes doivent être tenus responsables. Troisièmement, il est de notre responsabilité collective d'assurer le respect des droits humains et des libertés fondamentales. La Belgique reste particulièrement attachée au travail de l'OSCE au sein de la dimension humaine. Nous regrettons que la réunion annuelle de mise en œuvre des engagements de la dimension humaine de septembre dernier ait dû être annulée, mais nous comptons donc sur une édition encore plus productive l'année prochaine. Nous devons garantir le respect des droits humains et des libertés fondamentales et impérativement maintenir et renforcer un dialogue régulier avec les organisations de la société civile ainsi qu'avec les défenseurs des droits humains. Je tiens également à réitérer notre soutien aux 3 institutions autonomes qui nous assistent dans la mise en œuvre de nos engagements et à saluer les efforts déployés par le Bureau des institutions démocratiques et des droits de l'homme afin de continuer à observer les élections dans les États participants de l'OSCE, malgré les multiples défis liés à la pandémie. En tant que coactivateur du mécanisme de Moscou concernant la Biélorussie, la Belgique salue le rapport du professeur Benedek récemment présenté qui confirme les graves violences des droits humains commises par les autorités biélorusses à la suite des élections présidentielles du 9 août 2020. Le rapport du professeur Benedek offre un ensemble précieux de recommandations et j'appelle les autorités biélorusses à reconsidérer leur approche, à mettre en œuvre ces recommandations et à s'engager dans un dialogue constructif et inclusif en vue de trouver des solutions pacifiques en respectant les demandes du peuple biélorusse. Permettez-moi de terminer en félicitant notre collègue Edi Rama pour les qualités diplomatiques dont il a fait preuve en tant que président en exercice et en assurant à ma collègue Anne Linde que la Suède peut compter sur notre plein soutien pour sa présidence en 2021. Je vous remercie.
I thank Her Excellency Sophie Wilms, and now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Denmark, His Excellency Irpe Kofod. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairperson. We come together in extraordinary times, also illustrated by this meeting's virtual character. The pandemic has not made it easier to tackle the serious security challenges that we continue to face. But we have the tools, our shared OSCE principles and commitments. We must all show the necessary political will to respect and uphold them. I'm very encouraged by the fact that we, under the Albanian chair's skilled leadership, seem able to find consensus at this meeting on a new Secretary General and new head of the OSCE autonomous institutions. A final decision on this is of utmost importance for the organization. The conflict in eastern Ukraine remains the greatest security challenge in Europe. Fighting can be halted when the necessary political will is there. The relative calm since the July agreement in the trilateral contact group is proof of this. Denmark stands firmly behind the need for full implementation of the Minsk agreements and restoration of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. We call on Russia to end its illegal annexations of Crimea. We remind all participant states that the SMM must have unimpeded and safe access throughout Ukraine within its international recognized borders. We also maintain our unwavering support for Georgia's sovereignty and territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders. 30 years ago, we, the political leaders of the OSCE, adopted the Copenhagen document. We agreed that the protection and promotion of human rights and fundamental freedoms is one of the basic purposes of government. It is deplorable that the human rights situation across the OSCE region is nevertheless worsening. In this regard, we reiterate our call on Belarus to respect the principles and commitments that we have all signed up to. The violence and repression by the Belarusian authorities against its own people must end now. We believe that the OSCE has a key role to play in the fight against torture and welcome strengthening efforts in this regard. We remain firm supporters of broad and unhindered participation by civil society in OSCE events, and we reaffirm our unwavering support for the OSCE's autonomous institutions, their mandate, and their independence. Mr. Chairperson, Denmark welcomes the cessation of hostilities in and around Nagorno-Karabakh. The toll of the civilian population caused by the fighting is unacceptable. We urge the parties to resume negotiations within the framework of the Minsk Group and its co-chairs with the view of reaching a future comprehensive agreement. Mr. Chairperson, the European security architecture is under severe pressure and in some aspects even eroding. Conventional arms control and security and confidence building measures are at the heart of our common security. We need to preserve existing instruments that have served us well, but we must also modernize our toolbox, in particular the Vienna document, and create systems that take into account new security realities and also new technologies. The structured dialogue continues to be a valuable forum for advancing the agenda. We must now come together to defend and develop the European security architecture. Denmark is certainly willing to play its part in this endeavor. In conclusion, I thank the Albanian chairman in office and his team for their very transparent and successful manner of conducting the chairmanship throughout a challenging 2020. I'm looking forward to closely cooperating with the incoming chairperson, Swedish Foreign Minister Ann Linde, and wish her success for the coming year. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency Jeppe Kofod, and now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Iceland, His Excellency Martin Eyjolfsson. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed our lives and our way of thinking and brought new challenges to democratic values, human rights, and multilateralism. I commend the Albanian chair for its capable leadership during difficult times. Looking ahead, we cannot ignore that the security situation in the OSCE area remains uncertain. The Helsinki Final Act, which we commemorate this year, is the foundation for the commitments made in Helsinki resulted in creating the unique and inclusive forum of 57 OSCE participating states, seeking comprehensive security through dialogue in all three dimensions. For decades, the OSCE has effectively contributed to the conventional arms control and confidence and security building measures. We must fully adhere to our arms control commitments and obligations and seek to preserve, strengthen, and modernize these measures. Iceland is among the majority of participating states supporting a modernization proposals for the Vienna document. The Vienna document and the Treaty on Open Skies cannot be implemented selectively. We also call on all participating states to implement the Treaty on Conventional Forces in Europe and to comply with the letter and spirit of all obligations and commitments. Our societies are exposed to hybrid threats, cyber attacks, and disinformation campaigns originating from state and non-state actors. No single state can confront these threats alone. We value the structured dialogue as an opportunity to renew a meaningful exchange of ideas to build trust, addressing risk reductions and threat perceptions. Madam Chair, the war in Nagorno-Karabakh has demonstrated that frozen conflicts can turn into a full-scale war in a short time with dire consequences for the civilians. We welcome the ceasefire between Armenia and Azerbaijan and support the efforts of the co-chairs of the Minsk Group to achieve a lasting peace. Let me restate Iceland's support for Georgia's sovereignty and territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders, and express hope for a comprehensive and lasting political settlement regarding Transnistria. We reiterate our full support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders and territorial waters, and call on Russia to return control of Crimea to Ukraine. We stress the importance of ensuring the safety of the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission and its unhindered access throughout the entire territory of Ukraine. This year, we mark the 20th anniversary of the UN Security Council 1325, Women, Peace and Security, and reiterate our strong commitment to its full implementation. Madam Chair, as an invoking state of the Moscow mechanism, Iceland calls on Belarusian authorities to follow the recommendations of Dr. Benedict's report and engage with the OSCE chair in facilitating an inclusive dialogue in the country. I strongly condemn recent terrorist attacks in the OSCE area, including Austria and France. Iceland stands in solidarity with the affected communities. While we strive to protect the freedom of religion or belief, these attacks are a stark reminder that religion can never justify terror or violence. The comprehensive security concept of the OSCE supports the reaching of these Sustainable Development Goals with its emphasis on human rights and protecting the environment. We are committed to fundamental freedoms of all people in the OSCE area, especially of vulnerable groups, to the equal rights of men and women, and to the rights of LGBT people. Madam Chair, while it is regrettable that participating states were unable to extend the mandate of the previous Secretary General and heads of institutions earlier this year, I offer my praise to the competent professionals who manage these positions in the interim and wish the incoming appointees every success upon assuming their new duties. Allow me to conclude by expressing our full support for the upcoming Swedish chairmanship. Thank you very much.
I thank His Excellency Martin A. Jolfsson. Thank you. Now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Georgia, His Excellency David Zalkalyani. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Distinguished colleagues, let me start by commending the OSCE chairperson in office, His Excellency Edi Rama, for his leadership and dedication of the chairmanship throughout the challenging year. Thank you for organizing the Ministerial Council meeting in a virtual format in current difficult circumstances. The motto of the chairman in office, implementing our commitments together, is as urgent today as ever. 45 years passed since our commitment to the Helsinki Final Act and 30 years since the adoption of the Charter of Paris, which laid the foundation for a peaceful and rules-based order in the OSCE area. However, we are still in need of shared political will in order to find common ground and foster dialogue. Dear colleagues, our annual gathering gives us a unique opportunity to turn our commitments into relevant decisions. At this critical juncture, I am glad that participating states managed to build a consensus on OSCE leadership nominations. I hope tomorrow's decision will ensure full and proper functioning of our institutions. However, it is regretful that we were unable to reach consensus on a number of important documents, including on political declaration, Vienna document, and UNSCR 1324. I'm convinced that the adoption of these documents would have contributed to much needed trust, transparency, and confidence. Excellencies, we are faced by new reality when the pandemic further aggravates already dire security and humanitarian situation in the OSCE area. With this in mind, I believe our organization and its institutions undergo the test for effectiveness, first and foremost in terms of ensuring common security. In times this ruthless virus, we see the existing conflicts in the OSCE area put vulnerable societies in exceptionally difficult conditions. The solution is clear. Existing challenges can only be overcome by universal adherence to common principles and acknowledgement that the responsibility is shared among 57. While we are commemorating landmark anniversaries of the Helsinki Final Act and the Charter of Paris, unfortunately, we still witness the brazen violations of the very principles enshrined in these documents. It is alarming to observe one of the OSCE participating states, the Russian Federation, further continuing destructive and aggressive actions in Georgia and Ukraine by breaching the principles of inviolability of frontiers and territorial integrity of states, and consequently attempting to forcefully redraw the borders. In blatant violation of the EU-mediated 12 August 2008 ceasefire agreement, Russia has been further consolidating its military foothold in Georgia's Abkhazia and Skhin Valley regions. It has been conducting illegal military exercises with Kavkaz 2020 military drills as a vivid example on the territories of these occupied regions. As time passes, the security, humanitarian, and human rights challenges emanating from the occupation are only increasing, while residents of occupied regions are virtually kept as hostages of these illegal policies. Amidst pandemic and full disrespect of the UN Secretary General's call for immediate global ceasefire, erecting razor fences and other physical barriers along the occupation line between the war-torn communities continued, which dramatically affected the lives of local population. Moreover, brutal killings of ethnic Georgians, illegal detentions have become a common malpractice in these regions. It is particularly concerning that the international security mechanisms and human rights monitors, including the only international mission on the ground, the EU monitoring mission, are prevented to enter the Georgia's Russian-occupied territories and regions. Given the continuous provocations on the ground, I would like to highlight the important role of the UMM and its mission and its activities. Regretfully, we have witnessed also destructive attitude towards a negotiation format like Geneva International Discussion and IPRMs. Through politicizing the humanitarian issues and using the practice of walkouts, Russia has been hampering the substantial discussions within these formats. It is even more alarming that Russia has been taking additional legal steps toward de facto annexation of Georgia's occupied regions. Adoption of the so-called program on common socio-economic space between Russia and the occupied Abkhazia region of Georgia just a few days ago is yet another manifestation of Russia's attempts to fully incorporate Georgia's indivisible regions into its military, political, and economic and social systems. On top of it, Russia intensified hybrid warfare, disinformation and propaganda, as well as large-scale cyber attacks in the last years against government, judiciary, media, and private sectors of Georgia. Its propaganda machinery specifically targeted the Richard Lugar Center of Public Health Research, that laboratory that has been important in Georgia's fight against COVID-19. Moreover, even the UMM has become the subject of the attack of this disinformation campaign from Russia. Distinguished audience, against this background, Georgia has been sparing no effort to reach the progress on the way to peaceful conflict resolution by using the GID and IPRMs. On the other hand, Georgia has been steadily pursuing reconciliation and confidence building policy. The Peace Initiative, a step to better future, is implemented to improve socio-economic conditions of the people in the occupied territories, increase engagement and people-to-people contacts across the occupation line. In this difficult time of pandemic, my government has been providing humanitarian assistance to Abkhazia region to mitigate dire conditions of local population. Unfortunately, Tskhin Valley region remains fully isolated and the access and assistance is denied. Dear colleagues, you are aware that Georgia has fully implemented the EU-mediated ceasefire agreement and numerously reaffirmed its non-use of force commitment. We are still waiting for the reciprocity from Russia. The long-term solution of the conflict lays in Russia's compliance with the ceasefire agreement. To that end, let me once again call on Russia to cease human rights violations and allow human rights and international security arrangements in both Georgian regions, withdraw its military forces from the occupied regions of Georgia, and to comply with the fundamental norms and principles of the international law. Excellencies, despite all these difficulties, we are firm in our strive towards democratic transformation and rock solid in our commitment to its European and Euro-Atlantic integration. Recently, Georgia held parliamentary elections, which international community assessed as competitive, where overall fundamental freedoms were respected. Let me use this occasion and express gratitude to all international observation missions, including the OSCE ODIHR and the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, for monitoring these elections. My government is determined to address the outstanding issues, and with this in mind, we look forward to the final report of the OSCE ODIHR observation mission to follow up on its recommendations. Distinguished colleagues, in the conclusion, let me take this opportunity to once again commend Albanian chairmanship for its able stewardship throughout difficult year and wish the best of success to upcoming Swedish chairmanship. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I thank His Excellency David Zalkaziani, and now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of San Marino, His Excellency Luca Beccari. You have the floor, sir.
Signor Presidente, Eccellenze, signore e signori. Prima di tutto vorrei ricordare tutte le persone che hanno perso la vita a causa della pandemia in corso e tutti gli stati partecipanti e non solo hanno registrato ingenti perdite di capitale umano in questi mesi di gestione del Covid-19. Permettetemi di estendere i miei più sentiti apprezzamenti alla Presidenza albanese che, malgrado le enormi difficoltà che stiamo attraversando, è riuscita a portare avanti il lavoro dell'OSCE, continuando a lavorare per il consolidamento della sicurezza in tutta la nostra area geografica. La Presidenza albanese è riuscita a mantenere vivo il multilateralismo e l'attenzione per l'organizzazione e all'interno dell'organizzazione. Nonostante i nostri sforzi, purtroppo quest'anno registriamo ulteriori lesioni alla pace e alla sicurezza nell'area dell'OSCE e a quel concetto di sicurezza omnicomprensiva che ci sta tanto a cuore. Le situazioni gravi che si registrano in Ucraina, Georgia, Transnistria e non da ultimi il Nagorno-Karabakh e in Bielorussia continuano a preoccuparci e ad occuparci. È per questo che San Marino continua a promuovere il dialogo e la cooperazione internazionale, due capisaldi sui quali costruire il nostro futuro. La transizione forzata verso una interazione quasi esclusivamente telematica ha reso ancora più attuale il tema della sicurezza online. Sebbene sia da tempo che studiamo questo problema, l'attuale scenario mondiale ha fatto emergere chiaramente quanto impegno sia ancora necessario su questo fronte. Continua altresì ad essere cruciale per la promozione della tolleranza e non discriminazione, spesso attaccata anche online. Ugualmente, la minaccia terroristica non cessa di preoccupare tutta la nostra comunità, come dimostrano gli eventi recenti che si sono verificati a Vienna, a pochi passi dal quartiere generale dell'OSCE. Non ultime, la lotta alla tortura e alla pena di morte, pratiche inumane che minacciano la dignità della nostra civiltà. Signor Presidente, San Marino instancabilmente reitera l'appello al rispetto dei diritti umani, delle libertà fondamentali, del pluralismo e della libertà di espressione, sia questa nel senso più tradizionale che attraverso i più moderni mezzi di comunicazione. E in questo contesto il contrasto alle fake news e alla corruzione, due fenomeni diffusi che compromettono le basi del funzionamento dei nostri sistemi democratici. San Marino riconosce grande importanza all'uguaglianza di genere e al ruolo della donna in tutte le sfere della società e anche nel campo del mantenimento della pace e della sicurezza. A 75 anni dall'adozione della Carta delle Nazioni Unite, San Marino crede con ancora più convinzione nel multilateralismo e in particolare nella genuinità dei meccanismi dell'OSCE, frutto dell'atto finale di Helsinki. Erano e rimangono questi gli strumenti più efficaci che abbiamo a disposizione per disinnescare i conflitti che colpiscono il nostro pianeta. Per questo motivo è importante ristabilire la fiducia, quale base per ristabilire le relazioni di amicizia e convivenza pacifica fra tutti gli Stati partecipanti. Signor Presidente, in conclusione, mi congratulo per le prossime nomine dei 4 ruoli dirigenziali delle istituzioni dell'organizzazione, il segretario generale, il direttore dell'ODIHR, il rappresentante della libertà dei media, l'alto commissario sulle minoranze nazionali. Desidero confermare il sostegno sammarinese alle loro attività, così come all'Assemblea parlamentare e alle missioni sul campo, che costituiscono la spina dorsale della nostra organizzazione. Formulo i migliori auguri alla prossima presidenza svedese e nei miei ringraziamenti agli Stati che si sono proposti per i prossimi anni alla presidenza dell'OSCE, garantendo ordine e proseguimento ai nostri lavori. Grazie per l'attenzione.
I thank His Excellency Luca Beccari, and now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representatives of Monaco, His Excellency Laurent Anselmi. You have the floor, sir.
Merci. Monsieur le Président, chers collègues, Mesdames et Messieurs, je voudrais à mon tour féliciter la présidence albanaise pour le travail qu'elle a effectué avec détermination et dévouement au cours de l'année écoulée dans un contexte exceptionnel en raison de la pandémie Covid-19. Alors qu'aucun de nos États n'était préparé à une telle crise, la propagation fulgurante du virus a mis la solidarité internationale à l'épreuve. Pour autant, le dynamisme impulsé par la présidence, conjugué aux efforts déployés par le secrétariat de l'OSCE pour s'adapter aux nouvelles méthodes de travail imposées par la situation sanitaire, ont permis à notre organisation d'assurer la continuité de ses activités et de mener à bien de nombreuses missions. À cet égard, je me réjouis qu'un consensus ait pu être atteint autour de la nomination des 4 chefs des institutions et je remercie la présidence albanaise d'avoir su mener les consultations de manière inclusive et efficace. Monsieur le Président, nous célébrons cette année plusieurs anniversaires, parmi lesquels les 75 ans de la fin de la guerre mondiale, les 45 ans de l'acte final d'Helsinki et les 30 ans de la Charte de Paris pour une nouvelle Europe. Depuis 75 ans, ensemble, nous avons relevé maints défis, affronté de multiples crises et œuvré à renforcer le droit international dans le but de construire un monde plus sûr et un monde plus équitable. Néanmoins, force est de constater qu'aujourd'hui, le système international est déstabilisé et le multilatéralisme remis en cause. Dans un contexte où la pandémie a pu amplifier les tendances au repli sur soi, il est crucial que nous apportions une réponse collective aux menaces transnationales qui mettent à mal les progrès durement acquis et fragilisent la paix comme la sécurité internationale. Aucun État ne peut en effet affronter seul les enjeux internationaux actuels. Et à cet égard, je tiens à saluer le rôle central joué par l'OSCE dans la promotion de la paix, de la stabilité et de la sécurité. que ce soit en assurant une médiation entre les parties à un conflit, en encourageant la coopération environnementale ou encore en protégeant les droits des plus vulnérables. Notre organisation a su s'imposer comme un acteur majeur des relations internationales. Nous constatons avec effroi que la zone OSCE est de nouveau en proie à des actes terroristes d'une rare violence. La principauté de Monaco condamne fermement les actes odieux et lâches perpétrés en France, notamment dans la ville voisine de Nice ou plus récemment à Vienne. Je voudrais ici exprimer toute la solidarité de mon pays avec les États affectés ainsi qu'avec les victimes de la barbarie terroriste. À l'instar de nombreux pays, Monaco a pris des mesures fortes afin de lutter contre le terrorisme et les flux financiers qui l'alimentent. À ce titre, au cours des dernières années, Monaco a enrichi son arsenal législatif dans le domaine sécuritaire et adopté des sanctions économiques à l'encontre des personnes et des entités affiliées à des organisations terroristes. Par ailleurs, les conflits ont une fois de plus largement dominé notre agenda. Ainsi, par exemple, en ce qui concerne les récents événements survenus dans la région du Haut-Karabakh, l'accord de cessez-le-feu signé le 9 novembre dernier a permis l'arrêt des combats, ce qui était indispensable. Pour autant, je souhaite réaffirmer l'importance du rôle que devrait avoir le groupe de Minsk dans la conduite des négociations futures qui permettront, je l'espère, d'aboutir à un plan de paix durable dans le respect des droits fondamentaux de la personne humaine. Monsieur le Président, on ne peut aborder ce nouveau contexte d'insécurité sans évoquer la gravité de la crise climatique. Les catastrophes naturelles de grande ampleur vont s'intensifier et provoqueront, nous le savons, des désastres humanitaires, des déplacements de population et auront un impact sur l'accès aux ressources naturelles. L'accès à l'eau, plus particulièrement, est un enjeu mondial, comme nous avons pu l'évoquer lors de la dernière conférence méditerranéenne. Ces phénomènes sont des vecteurs d'instabilité politique et de conflit. L'urgence est toujours là, et plus que jamais, nous devons donner une place prépondérante à la préservation de l'environnement dans les politiques de relèvement post-pandémie. Que ce soit en poursuivant la transition énergétique, en accélérant le développement de la mobilité douce ou en faisant la promotion de l'économie circulaire, Monaco a placé l'évolution des modes de consommation et de production au cœur de son projet de société. Monsieur le Président, force est de constater qu'une fois de plus, ce sont les individus les plus vulnérables qui subissent de plein fouet la crise socio-économique qui découle de la crise sanitaire. En effet, en 2020, l'insécurité alimentaire a bondi et ce ne sont pas moins de 71 millions de personnes qui ont basculé dans l'extrême pauvreté. De plus, il est inquiétant de constater que la pandémie a augmenté la vulnérabilité des victimes de traite. Plus que jamais, l'action de l'OSCE dans ce domaine, notamment la mise en œuvre de la lutte contre la traite des êtres humains le long des voies de migration en Méditerranée, s'avère indispensable. La principauté, mon pays, est fier de pouvoir apporter sa contribution à la réalisation de ce projet dont la pertinence et l'utilité ne sont plus à démontrer. Parmi les groupes exposés figurent également les femmes et les filles. En cette année, marquée par le 20e anniversaire de la résolution 1325 du Conseil de sécurité des Nations Unies sur les femmes, la paix et la sécurité, nous enregistrons une intolérable augmentation de la violence domestique, alors même que les femmes sont les plus impliquées contre la COVID-19. Nous devons donc impérativement les protéger contre les violences et les abus sexuels dont elles sont encore trop souvent victimes. C'est pourquoi le gouvernement princier est en train de renforcer la législation pénale monégasque relative à l'incrimination des agressions sexuelles et a lancé une nouvelle campagne de sensibilisation mettant l'accent sur les violences intrafamiliales. Monsieur le Président, la situation inédite que nous traversons doit nous conduire à redoubler de vigilance afin d'anticiper les effets déstabilisateurs de la pandémie et ne pas voir les conflits se propager là où les ressources se font plus rares et où la pauvreté s'enracine. Qu'il s'agisse de la préservation de l'environnement, de la lutte contre les inégalités, de la santé ou encore de la paix, seul un renforcement du rôle des organisations multilatérales et de l'action collective nous permettra de faire face aux multiples défis auxquels nous sommes confrontés. Soyons solidaires, soyons unis et déterminés pour que l'OSCE continue d'être l'un des garants de la paix et de la sécurité en Europe et l'un des moteurs du multilatéralisme dont ce 21e siècle ne saurait se passer. Avant de conclure, qu'il me soit enfin permis d'exprimer le soutien de Monaco à la présidence suédoise qui s'apprête à prendre les rênes de notre organisation. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
I thank His Excellency Laurent Ansemi, and now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representatives of Croatia, Her Excellency Andrea Metelko-Zgombic. You have the floor, Madam.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in 2020, we commemorate several anniversaries, including of Helsinki and Paris summits, as the milestone events for our organization, convened in the midst of the Cold War and fall of the Iron Curtain, respectively. This very first virtual Ministerial Council meeting, taking place against a similarly dramatic background, but of different origin, will also feature prominently in the history of the organization. This reaffirms that the world's largest regional security organization and the linchpin to the Euro-Atlantic and Euro-Asian stability remains vigilant and adaptable to the challenging and ever-changing environment. And Croatia salutes this with great enthusiasm. I would like to thank Mr. Prime Minister and Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs Rama and his able OSCE chairmanship team in Vienna and Tirana, not only for bringing us together today under unprecedented challenge of COVID-19, but also for steering the OSCE so competently through the uncharted waters of this new viral scourge. Yet, despite all obstacles, we are now looking forward to several important Tirana deliverables. Croatia is very much looking forward to the appointment of the new Secretary General, Director of Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, High Commissioner on National Minorities, and representative on the freedom of the media. Our soon-to-be colleagues will have my country's steadfast support as they embark in their very demanding tasks. The top 5 decisions are vital for ensuring sound institutional and leadership footing of our organization for the medium-term future. This is excellent news and a much-needed positive momentum for the OSCE. Having said that, protracted conflicts, regrettably, continue to threaten the security and stability of the entire OSCE area. Croatia reiterates its profound concern about the conflict in Ukraine, well within its 7th year. Although the security situation in the East Ukraine has improved since July, the conflict continues to take its toll. This is absolutely unacceptable. We commend the efforts of the Normandy 4, the Trilateral Contact Group, and the OSCE Special Mission to Ukraine. Croatia will continue to actively support the indispensable work of the SMM, operating in a very difficult environment, exacerbated by the pandemic. All impediments that SMM faces, which occur predominantly in the non-government controlled areas, must stop immediately. Croatia welcomes the cessation of hostilities in and around Nagorno-Karabakh following the ceasefire of 9 November. Now the international humanitarian law must be respected and humanitarian access granted for all affected by the conflict. We underline our full support to the OSCE Minsk Group, led by its co-chairs, and the personal representative of the OSCE chairperson in office, in their search of the negotiated, comprehensive, and sustainable settlement of the conflict, including on the status of Nagorno-Karabakh. The situation with regards to protracted conflict in Georgia and Moldova remains my government's deep concern as well. Human rights and democracy continue to be challenged in the OSCE area. No nation has achieved a perfect record in the human rights dimension. Croatia therefore calls on all participating states to redouble our meaningful, comprehensive, and sustained efforts of upholding OSCE principles and commitments, including the recommendation made under the Moscow mechanism. Finally, Madam Chairperson, as you all know, last week the Permanent Council commemorated another important anniversary, 25 years of the Dayton-Paris Agreement for Peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The agreement prescribes current constitutional framework of the country, with the equality of three constituent peoples being one of its central tenets. This must be preserved and further enhanced, including through electoral reform, to the benefit of security and stability of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you very much.
I thank Her Excellency Andrea Metelko-Zgombic, and now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Switzerland, His Excellency Ignacio Daniel Giovanni Cassis. You have the floor, sir.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Excellences, chers collègues, Mesdames et Messieurs, c'est un honneur et un plaisir d'être présent en Albanie, et ce pour la deuxième fois déjà en quelques jours, même si aujourd'hui, je le suis seulement par vidéoconférence. Il y a une semaine, l'Albanie et la Suisse fêtaient le 50e anniversaire de leurs relations bilatérales. J'aimerais réitérer mes remerciements à la présidence albanaise de l'OSCE pour son grand engagement et l'habilité avec laquelle elle a dirigé l'institution pendant cette année marquée par de nombreuses situations difficiles. Chers collègues, la sécurité de nos pays dépend en grande partie de notre sécurité commune. L'OSCE, en sa qualité de plus grande organisation régionale de sécurité du monde, y apporte une contribution importante. Il est de notre devoir d'en prendre soin et de contribuer à son bon fonctionnement. Malgré de fortes divergences politiques, nous devons tout mettre en œuvre pour que cette plateforme de dialogue retrouve une plus grande capacité d'action. Cela nécessite notamment un budget adéquat et des processus efficaces. En d'autres termes, le bon fonctionnement de l'organisation et le renforcement de sa capacité d'action sont essentiels pour notre sécurité commune. L'année 2020 a été riche en défis, notamment en raison de l'instabilité croissante dans la région de l'OSCE. Il faut mettre un terme au conflit dans l'est de l'Ukraine. À cet égard, la pleine application des accords de Minsk constitue un élément clé. Nous devons également veiller à ce que la mission spéciale d'observation ne soit pas entravée dans l'exécution de son mandat par des restrictions de sa liberté de mouvement. Cette mission contribue de manière significative à réduire les tensions dans les zones touchées par le conflit. La fin de la violence dans le conflit du Haut-Karabakh doit être saluée. Cependant, elle a également montré que la persistance de conflits prolongés n'est pas une option si nous voulons assurer une paix durable. Nous sommes convaincus que les négociations de paix se poursuivront sous la direction des coprésidents du groupe de Minsk et que l'OSCE pourra continuer à apporter sa contribution. La situation au Bélarus reste préoccupante. Il faut mettre un terme à la violence. Les violations graves et systématiques des droits de l'homme doivent cesser immédiatement. Il convient de faire toute la lumière sur les événements et les auteurs des violations doivent répondre de leurs actes. Il ne saurait y avoir d'impunité. Dans ce contexte, je me félicite de l'offre de la présidence albanaise et de la Suède de soutenir la recherche d'une solution dans le cadre de l'OSCE. Mesdames et messieurs, notre volonté politique est nécessaire afin d'adapter les mesures de confiance et de sécurité aux défis actuels. Plus que jamais, les capitales doivent redoubler d'efforts afin d'assurer le respect des principes de l'OSCE. La Suisse continuera à s'engager avec énergie. Chers collègues, je saisis l'occasion pour remercier l'ancienne équipe dirigeante, Madame Gisela Dottir, Monsieur Zanier, Monsieur Désir, ainsi que notre ancien secrétaire général, Thomas Greminger. Leur grand engagement au service de l'organisation doit être souligné. Au nom de la Suisse, je vous assure notre plein succès à la future présidente suédoise et à la présidence polonaise qui lui succédera. Ensemble, nous regardons vers l'avenir. Renforçons l'OSCE et sa capacité d'action et, comme premier pas, adoptons demain la décision sur les 4 positions clés de l'OSCE. Pensez à après-demain afin de prendre aujourd'hui les mesures appropriées pour demain. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
I thank His Excellency Ignacio Daniel Giovanni Cassis. And now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Armenia, His Excellency Ara Ayvazyan. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Chairperson, I would like to join colleagues and thank you, your team, for tireless efforts and leadership of this organization throughout the year. The year 2020 has been marked and profoundly affected by the unprecedented challenges caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Yet for the people of Artsakh and Armenia, the large-scale war unleashed by Azerbaijan with the direct involvement of its allies, Turkey, and foreign terrorist fighters and jihadists added another dimension to the already dire situation. During the 44 days of war, Azerbaijan and Turkey, in a clear defiance of their international obligations and in violation of their commitments towards the OSCE, despite numerous calls made by OSCE Minsk Group co-chair countries, despite 3 agreements to cease hostilities, despite persistent calls of international community, continued the offensive. The aggression was accompanied by numerous gross violations of the laws and customs applicable in armed conflicts, by war crimes, including deliberate targeting of civilian population and critical infrastructure, executions, inhuman or degrading treatment of prisoners of war and civilian captives, beheadings, mutilation of dead bodies, and other well-documented crimes with the ultimate purpose of ethnic cleansing of the Armenian population from their ancestral lands. In this context, we welcome the consensus reached on the draft Ministerial Council decision on the prevention and eradication of torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment, which we consider as the most important outcome of this ministerial. Today, we should acknowledge the efforts of the Russian Federation and personal engagement of President Vladimir Putin in establishing a ceasefire and stopping war, also through providing peacekeeping forces on the ground. We are also grateful to France and US for their efforts and engagement to achieve ceasefire. The actions of Azerbaijan and its allies created new dangerous precedent for addressing conflict situations in the area of responsibility of the OSCE. First, it is the recruitment, transfer, and deployment of foreign terrorist fighters and jihadists from Syria and Libya in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict zone by Turkey, which flagrantly violates the international obligation and OSCE commitments on combating the phenomenon of the foreign terrorist fighters. This is the first time ever that 2 OSCE participating states have deployed terrorist fighters and jihadists in support of their armed forces in the context of conflict in the OSCE area of responsibility, a fact that was acknowledged not only by a number of the OSCE participating states, but the relevant UN body. Second, Azerbaijan's aggression against Artsakh was greatly instigated and supported politically and militarily by the Turkish leadership in its pursuit of expansionist power projection into the South Caucasus and beyond. Third, Azerbaijan and its allies unleashed the war against Artsakh, falsely claiming the legitimate right to use force, which is a clear breach of international law. Furthermore, Azerbaijan and Turkey now insist that the situation resulting from the use of force, aggression and war, large-scale violations of international law, war crimes and ethnic cleansing should be considered as a resolution of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. We strongly condemn the use of force against the right of people of Nagorno-Karabakh to self-determination, and we will not accept any attempt to deprive the people of Nagorno-Karabakh of their rights. Despite assurances that have been voiced out today as well, Armenians have been ethnically cleansed from the territories of Nagorno-Karabakh recently occupied by Azerbaijan. Those few who stayed were killed or tortured and expelled by Azerbaijani armed forces from their ancestral homeland. This reality clearly attests to the fact that Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh cannot be placed under the jurisdiction of Azerbaijan. The comprehensive resolution of the conflict aimed at achieving lasting and sustainable peace in the region includes status of Artsakh based on realization of the right of self-determination, security of its people, the occupation by Azerbaijan of the territories of Nagorno-Karabakh, safe and dignified return to their homes of the recently displaced population of Artsakh, preservation of Armenian cultural and religious heritage on the territories that fell under the control of Azerbaijan. Immediate and unconditional exchange of prisoners of war and hostages based on principle all for all, repatriation of remains should be implemented without any further delay. The trilateral statement of November 9 should be considered without prejudice to the final political and durable settlement of the conflict. Only political, negotiated settlement that will respect rights of all may bring peace and reconciliation to the South Caucasus region. At the same time, to achieve this, Turkey, whose genocidal record against Armenians is well known, should abandon its destabilizing policy and refrain from any actions which could further fuel tensions. In this context, we call on all OSCE participating states to continue exerting pressure on Turkey to withdraw its military personnel from the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict zone, from the South Caucasus, together with its affiliated terrorist fighters. So far, there is no sign that foreign terrorist fighters are being withdrawn from the conflict area. Quite opposite. There are persistent reports on further spread of terrorist fighters and mercenaries and plans to resettle them in areas of Nagorno-Karabakh, which is currently occupied by Azerbaijan. The lasting and sustainable resolution of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict should be achieved through the negotiations under the auspices of the OSCE Minsk Group co-chairmanship, which is the only international mandated mechanism to deal with settlement of Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. In this context, we took positive note of the statement of heads of delegations of the OSCE Minsk Group co-chair countries, issued earlier today, which once again showed the unity and determination of the co-chair countries in pursuing negotiated, comprehensive and sustainable settlement of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. We also concur that all the foreign mercenaries brought in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict zone by Turkey and Azerbaijan should be withdrawn fully and promptly from the region. In this regard, we welcome the recent statement of the heads of delegations of the OSCE Minsk Group co-chairs, which shows unity and determination of the international mediators in resolving the conflict in peaceful and negotiated manner. In conclusion, I would like to welcome Sweden as incoming chair and wish them every success. I request this statement to be attached to the journal of the day. I thank you.
Noted.
I thank His Excellency Ara Aybazan, and now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Finland, His Excellency Pekka Olavi Haavisto. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Best greetings from Helsinki. Thank you, Minister Rama and the Albanian chairmanship for the tireless work throughout this challenging year, a year that marks the 45th anniversary of the Helsinki Final Act and the 30th anniversary of the Paris Charter. Of course, we all would love to be today in a beautiful Tirana. I warmly congratulate the new Secretary General, Helga Schmidt, as well as new heads of institutions, State Secretary Ribeiro, Ambassador Adrapanov, and Mr. Nechachi, for their election and look forward to our close cooperation. I extend my thanks to the OSCE Secretariat, autonomous institutions, and field missions for keeping the OSCE flag flying. Conflicts and COVID-19 have marked this year in the OSCE era. Many people have lost their lives due to the pandemic, but unfortunately also in conflicts. Human rights are challenged and the situation is dire for many persons belonging to minorities as well as other persons at risk, journalists and human rights defenders. Respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms are at the core of the OSCE's comprehensive security concept. Regarding the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, Finland, as a member of the OSCE Minsk Group, supports the continuous efforts of the co-chairs and the personal representative of the chairperson in office towards a lasting political solution. The conflict in and around Ukraine remains unresolved and continues to overshadow our work in the OSCE. We call for Russia to engage unconditionally and fulfill its obligations laid down in the Minsk agreements and to return to respect international law with regard to the Crimea. Finland fully supports the OSCE efforts towards the resolution of conflicts in the territory of Georgia and in the Republic of Moldova within the existing agreed formats. The OSCE remains a key forum for conflict resolution and confidence building among the participating states. We should use this platform to address issues affecting our security. I hope that the structured dialogue will continue to produce small steps towards a common understanding. The independent report produced within the OSCE Moscow mechanism proves that the Belarusian security forces have committed systematic violations and abuses of human rights and fundamental freedoms. We urge Belarus to implement the recommendations outlined in the report and to make use of the OSCE to facilitate a broad national dialogue. We need to keep the OSCE toolkit up to date. Updating the Vienna document is a matter of priority. The Open Skies Treaty has suffered an unfortunate blow this year, but continues to contribute to transparency and trust. The priority for Finland is to enhance OSCE tools and resources in conflict prevention and mediation. We commit ourselves to the UN Security Council resolution on women, peace and security 20 years ago. Sustainable peace is not possible without women, but women's meaningful participation in peace processes is still very limited. Sexual and gender-based violence in conflicts remains a major challenge. For the OSCE to be credible, we should agree on an ambitious 1325 plan of action. I regret that this has not succeeded yet. I thank again the Albanian chairmanship and wish all the best to Sweden in 2021. I also welcome Poland to the OSCE Troika and congratulate North Macedonia for the chairmanship in 2023. And of course, we are supporting Estonia's candidacy for chairmanship 2024. Thank you for your attention.
I thank His Excellency Pekka Olavi Haavisto and message to Armenia. Your request to attach your statement to the journal of the meeting is duly noted. And now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Uzbekistan, His Excellency Abdulaziz Kamilov. You have the floor, sir.
Distinguished Chairperson in Office, Your Excellencies, heads of delegations, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I'd like to express my gratitude to the OSCE Chairperson in Office and Prime Minister of Albania, His Excellency Mr. Edi Rama, for convening this ministerial. We sincerely congratulate and wish every success to newly appointed OSCE Secretary General, Ms. Helga Maria Schmidt, High Commissioner for National Minorities, Mr. Kairat Abdrahmanov, Representative on Freedom of Media, Ms. Maria Teresa Ribeiro, and Director of the Bureau for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, Mr. Matteo Mikachi. In this regard, we acknowledge the great efforts of the Albanian chairmanship through the whole selection process. Today's OSCE Forum, which is taking place in the conditions of the pandemic, reaffirms the unique role of responsibility of our organization in ensuring the comprehensive human security and developing the adequate response to modern challenges. The past stage in the fight against the pandemic and its consequences has clearly shown the importance of close international cooperation and mutual and the multilateral approach to overcoming common problems. The global nature of pandemic crisis requires a global strategic plan of action. In this regard, President of the Republic of Uzbekistan, His Excellency Mr. Shavkat Mirziyoyev, proposed to develop the International Code of Voluntary Commitments of States during pandemic, which will set out measures to ensure effective collaboration among countries in such emergencies. We look forward to the support of our initiative by the OSCE participating countries. Distinguished colleagues, today Uzbekistan has decisively entered a qualitatively new stage of its development, where the most important task is the transition from national revival to national prosperity. The OSCE institutions play a distinctive role in promoting the implementation of the reform agenda. A new and democratic image of Uzbekistan is being created in the process of modernization of the state, strengthening the protection of human rights and freedoms, ensuring the rule of law. The political active of the population and the parties, the role of civil society, institutions, and the influence of the mass media have significantly increased. The National Human Rights Strategy is being implemented. The role of women in public administration and the economy is being strengthened. An anti-corruption agency has been established, which has allowed to raise efforts in this direction into a qualitatively new level. Uzbekistan pursues an open and constructive foreign policy. It's aimed at turning Central Asia into a region of stability and prosperity, ensuring regional security and strengthening friendly relations with its immediate neighbors remains as the main foreign policy priorities of Uzbekistan. Thanks to the initiative of the President of Uzbekistan, His Excellency Mr. Shavkat Mirziyoyev, the regular consultative meetings of the heads of Central Asian states became the region's common achievements. The prospects for stable development in Central Asia are closely linked to the achievement of peace and neighboring Afghanistan, which is the OSCE partner for cooperation. Uzbekistan participates actively in supporting and promoting the peace process in Afghanistan, contributing to the dialogue between the parties and implementation of important economic and infrastructure projects. We are firmly convinced that the Afghan problem must take an important place on the OSCE agenda. Distinguished participants, the issues of supporting the role of youth in the development of society, realization of its intellectual and creative potential have always remained at the focus of attention and activities of the OSCE in all three security dimensions. The President of Uzbekistan has put forward the initiative of adoption of the International Convention on the Rights of Youth. We reckon on the support of our initiative by the OSCE participating states. Yet another important issue directly related to the scope of the OSCE activities, the influence of climate change on the human security. Today, every country experiences the devastating impact of this effect. Unfortunately, these negative trends also pose a serious threat to sustainable development in Central Asia. Due to drying up, the Aral Sea has become the epicenter of an ecological disaster, the consequences of which are felt far beyond the region. On the initiative of the President of Uzbekistan, Shavkat Mirziyoyev, the concept of creating the zone of ecological innovations and technologies in the Aral Sea area is being promoted. We invite all OSCE participating states to engage actively in its implementation. We attach profound importance to the further development of the multi-partner trust fund for human security for the Aral Sea region. We are grateful to our OSCE partners, Norway and Finland, who have contributed to this fund along with the European Union. We are confident that it will become a reliable platform for practical assistance from the world community to the population of the region. Ladies and gentlemen, Uzbekistan stands for further strengthening the OSCE's role and profile, increasing its relevance in international affairs, as well as strengthening mutual trust of states in order to form a positive agenda for the organization. Further ensuring the effectiveness of the OSCE is totally linked with full respect for the basic principles and commitments enshrined in the Helsinki Final Act. In conclusion, allow me once again to express my gratitude to the Albania chairmanship for the productive fulfillment of its duties in a difficult period for the entire international community, and wish every success to the incoming Swedish OSCE chairpersonship. Thank you for your attention.
I thank His Excellency Abdulaziz Camilo, and now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Portugal, His Excellency Augusto Ernesto Santos Silva. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair. Dear participants, I would like to commend the Albanian chairmanship for organizing this Ministerial Council and for its valuable performance in steering the OSCE during such a challenging year. 2020 has been indeed a daunting year. A devastating pandemic jeopardizes both the health of our societies and vitality of our economies, and puts to test the stamina of our democratic values. The persistence of conflicts within our region has deepened a climate of mutual distrust. And finally, an institutional crisis like never seen before in the history of our organization. From the onset, the CSCE has summoned our countries to a joint endeavor to promote security and cooperation by building mutual confidence to resolve security issues in a spirit of transparency and partnership. Based on the interdependency of the three dimensions, it was truly a revolutionary, comprehensive concept of security. And the outreach to the Mediterranean and Asian partners was visionary. Since then, the OSCE has evolved and encompassed far-reaching ambitions, opening to civil society and working with other international organizations and institutions based on the platform for cooperative security. However, despite the OSCE's keys, our latest steps have been reluctant, our sight seems somehow blurry, and our will is unsteady. Dear participants, the good functioning of every organization rests upon good leadership. I am therefore glad to be here today and join you in the consensus on the appointment of the heads of the OSCE institutions. I wish to thank the Albanian chairmanship for the excellent way in which the selection process was conducted. I also wish to thank all the support our candidate, Mrs. Teresa Ribeiro, received from the participating states. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, our commitment to the OSCE is long-standing. The arms control framework adopted at the Lisbon Summit recognized the valuable role of the Vienna document. As the security challenges in Europe increase and the overall security environment evolves, it is crucial to modernize the Vienna document, a central pillar of peace and stability in Europe. The Treaty on Open Skies also continues to be a valuable instrument in arms control. More recently, during the Portuguese chairmanship of the Forum for Security Cooperation in 2016, the From Lisbon to Hamburg Declaration was adopted. Portugal actively supports the structured dialogue and stands ready to contribute to the development of this forum, which has a far-reaching potential for improving dialogue. I would like to point out the fight against terrorism in all its forms. The recent terrorist attacks in Vienna, the host of our organization, as well as in France, Germany, Turkey, Canada, UK, US, Croatia, and in our partner for cooperation, Afghanistan, are yet another reminder that we must act together. Terrorist and violent extremism organizations, as well as transnational organized crime networks, are taking advantage of the disruptions created worldwide by the pandemic to foster their activities. Portugal supports the adoption of decisions aiming at improving economic and environmental cooperation between the participating states in line with the 2030 agenda. Both the proposal on combating corruption and the proposal on environmental protection add to that goal. Promotion and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms are vital drivers for stability, security, cooperation, and peaceful development throughout our region. Among others, and on equal footing, combating torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment, the right of peaceful assembly, the right to access to information, fighting intolerance and discrimination based on thought, conscience, religion, or belief, and gender balance, all of which constitute essential elements in the promotion of human rights. I therefore praise the chairmanship for its ambitious stance in submitting a wide set of proposals in this regard. Finally, in the spirit of goodwill and transparency that guides our relationships under the Helsinki Final Act, I regret to note that within the OSCE region, so-called protracted conflicts are still a reality. The OSCE must contribute towards diffusing existing conflicts. Portugal therefore calls on all parties to engage in meaningful negotiations towards a comprehensive, peaceful, and sustainable settlement of these conflicts. Any solution should be guided by the Helsinki Final Act principles. The crisis in and around Ukraine saw recent improvement on the ground, namely a ceasefire that is largely holding, but the situation continues to raise great concern to the OSCE area. Portugal firmly supports Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, as well as the ongoing political and diplomatic efforts towards peace. The Helsinki Final Act remains as valid today as 45 years ago. The founding principle, the OSCE's comprehensive concept of security remains relevant. In order to strengthen the effectiveness of the organization, we must adopt a constructive attitude guided by the OSCE commitments and geared to concrete results. I am certain the Swedish chairmanship will continue to lead the way in the right direction, and you can count on Portugal's support and contribution to your endeavors. Thank you very much.
I thank His Excellency Augusto Ernesto Santos Silva, and now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Slovenia, His Excellency Stanislav Raščan. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Let me express my personal joy to be back at the OSCE work, this time as a Deputy Foreign Minister. The OSCE and its participating states had ambitious objectives set for 2020. We were all committed to work tirelessly to attain a wide range of goals and to make full use of our platform for dialogue. Instead, we are experiencing a COVID-19 pandemic of overwhelming proportions, re-emergence of conflicts, human rights violations, and acts of terrorism. Terrorist attacks remain a threat to our society. The despicable recent act of terrorism in our neighboring Austria, France, and in other countries are a sore reminder of the ongoing radicalization in our societies. I wish once more to extend our sympathy to the victims. There is a close link between terrorism and organized crime. The OSCE activities aimed at curbing the spread of small arms and light weapons importantly contribute to the global fight against terrorism. Slovenia strongly supports all efforts in this regard and calls for the adoption of all related decisions. The OSCE is not the main international organization responsible for tackling the pandemic, but it can play a crucial role in addressing its negative consequences through its comprehensive approach to security. This includes a range of measures from providing armed forces assistance to civilian authorities to fighting corruption by promoting digital transparency. When responding to the COVID-19 crisis, we should all bear in mind the need for continuous respect for universal human rights and the OSCE human dimension commitments. The pandemic is a multiplier of risk factors that endanger democracy. We have to make use of the existing OSCE tools, such as the Moscow mechanisms. Hopefully, the government of Belarus will see the benefits of the report presented in November and engage in an open dialogue with its opposition and the international community. Slovenia will continue to support the Belarusian civil society, including financially through European Endowment for Democracy Fund. The vision of a new, non-divided Europe from 3 decades ago was also a vision of security and stability. Today, the pillars of the established conventional arms control architecture are eroding due to the lack of trust. We have to reach a common understanding and resolve conflicts peacefully. We have to cooperate constructively in order for the OSCE to be effective in addressing the present and future challenges. Slovenia fully supports the endeavors of the normative format, the OSCE, the Trilateral Contact Group, and the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine. We also support the efforts to resume substantive negotiations to resolve the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict under the auspices of the OSCE Minsk Group co-chairs. At the same time, we should not forget that security risks related to climate change and environmental degradation are increasingly recognized as emerging challenges. They need to be taken into account when devising preventive, peacemaking, and peace-building actions. Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, Slovenia's gaining independence and becoming a sovereign state was out of the outcomes of the Paris Charters 30 years ago. As a staunch supporter of the effective multilateralism, the OSCE was the first international organization that Slovenia joined. Ever since, we have been fully committed to its work. This year, we have nominated an excellent candidate for the position of representative for freedom of media to help resolve the leadership challenges of the organization. We were constructive in reaching a consensus on all top 4 positions. We welcome the political will summoned among the 57 states to empower the new Secretary General and the heads of the autonomous OSCE institutions. In this spirit, Madam Chairperson, let me commend Albania on skillfully steering the organization in one of the most challenging years in recent history. Let me also wish Sweden every success in talking over the chairmanship of the OSCE and express our support to the announced chairmanships of North Macedonia and Estonia. You can count on Slovenia's full support and cooperation. Thank you very much.
I thank His Excellency Stanislav Raščan, and now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Poland, Minister of Foreign Affairs, His Excellency Zbigniew Rau. You have the floor, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank the Albanian chairmanship for their efforts to keep the OSCE operational despite the exceptional circumstances. This year's challenges, including COVID-19, have increased instability and unpredictability in the OSCE, leading to an unprecedented institutional crisis in the organization. Poland, therefore, supports the agreement on the key OSCE posts. Ladies and gentlemen, 30 years after the adoption of the Paris Charter, the OSCE must again find responses to the evolving security situation. It also needs to focus on its core functions. The fundamental OSCE principles enshrined in the Helsinki Final Act remain valid. Constant recommitment to the OSCE acquis is crucial. This has been the idea behind Poland's decision to assume the OSCE chairmanship in 2022. We are ready to mobilize the OECD potential. The ongoing violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine remains a pressing challenge for the European security. We are glad that the reduction in ceasefire violations and casualties, but political progress to find a peaceful solution is indispensable. The special monitoring mission must have unhindered access to the entire territory of Ukraine. The developments in Belarus pose another challenge. The report presented under the Moscow mechanism calls for free and fair elections as well as national dialogue. The OSCE can and should offer tools to facilitate this process and support the implementation of the OSCE commitments and international human rights law. The OSCE remains a proper forum to foster a regional dialogue and has unique instruments to de-escalate tensions. We welcome the cessation of violence in Nagorno-Karabakh and trust that sides will reach a lasting peaceful resolution with the support of the Minsk Group co-chairs. Our protracted conflicts in Georgia and Moldova also need to be resolved in line with the OSCE principles. We must further operationalize the OSCE toolkit to strengthen security and confidence building. This includes full implementation and substantial modernization of the Vienna document. Strengthening the human dimension is crucial for the protection of human rights and democratic principles. We reiterate our strong support to all OSCE autonomous institutions. The events, such as the Human Dimension Implementation Meeting, allow us to uphold the commitments as well as strengthen dialogue and trust. As the host country of the ODIHR, Poland will contribute to the improvement of our cooperation in this field. In 2021, my country will chair the Mediterranean Partnership Cooperation. We look forward to dialogue with the Mediterranean partners and the participating states. I wish the upcoming Swedish chairmanship a success in 2021 and support the decision on chairmanship of North Macedonia in 2023. We look forward to cooperating closely with the Troika to ensure smooth transition and synergy. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency Zbigniew Rau, and now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Belarus, His Excellency Vladimir Makey. You have the floor, sir.
Madam Chairperson, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the coronavirus pandemic took the world by surprise, impacting all spheres of life. Computer screens have replaced personal communication, so important in diplomacy. And this comes on top of the walls already erected by bloc thinking, geopolitical ambitions, and unwillingness to take into account each other's interests. The COVID-19 challenge has amplified the existing difficulties within and among the OSCE participating states. A serious deficit of trust persists, eroding the foundations of cooperation in all three dimensions of security and weakening our organization. Arms control and disarmament mechanisms are falling apart, becoming hostages of mutual claims, mistrust, and desire for unilateral advantages in the military sphere, as it was the case with the Treaty on the Elimination of Intermediate Range and Shorter Range Missiles, or losing viability like the Treaty on Open Skies after the recent US withdrawal. However, these challenges give us a clear signal to go back to the origins. A strong lesson from the Helsinki process, which marks its 45th anniversary this year, is that despite differences in approaches, political will and commitment to dialogue make it possible to find compromises and take decisions in the common interest. This year, we have witnessed that a key Helsinki principle, that of sovereign equality of states and respect for the rights inherent in sovereignty, has been forgotten or deliberately swept under the carpet. Instead, outdated and rusty mechanisms are being reactivated while arguments are not heard. Belarus is living through a turbulent political period. The priority is given to protecting internal order, stability, sovereignty, and stimulating social dialogue on most crucial public issues in the framework of the ongoing constitutional reform. Like any other OSCE participating state, we aspire to strike a proper balance between full enjoyment of human rights and freedoms and ensuring an appropriate level of security and order in the society. As we all know, there are no one-size-fits-all solutions for that. It is up to the Belarusian people to decide on Belarus' future. Social stresses, like in Belarus, occur in other OSCE participating states too? Are the countries west of Vienna ready to agree on OSCE mediation? Or are we talking about an already traditional stance to the countries east of Vienna? Probably we need to discuss seriously what concretely the OSCE chairmanship or Troika could propose in the cases of similar social stresses, apart from the calls from a transit of power, which I'm sure no country would accept. When it comes to unilateral and unsubstantiated restrictive measures introduced by some OSCE participating states against Belarus, we believe that the path of sanctions is counterproductive and has no future. Sanctions, especially economic ones, never achieve their stated goals, but hit the ordinary people in the first place and deepen the gap of mistrust in the OSCE area. Should we stir up then mutual accusations and confrontational rhetoric, or should we focus on genuine threats to security? Belarus makes its tangible contribution to the settlement of protracted conflicts in the OSCE area, non-proliferation efforts, fighting transnational threats and challenges, including human trafficking, promoting digitalization and connectivity. We are ready for a constructive and mutually beneficial dialogue on restoring viability and integrity of arms control regimes, as well as confidence and security building measures. We intend to continue our efforts in this direction also by joining other reasonable initiatives aimed at strengthening the OSCE efficiency. As we celebrate the 75th anniversary since the end of the Second World War, I cannot overemphasize the importance of remembering the tragic lessons of the past and combating glorification of Nazism and neo-Nazism and other related practices of intolerance in the OSCE framework. In December 1945, Albert Einstein said, "The war is won, but the peace is not." He could not foresee at that time that the path to peace would be so thorny. The Helsinki process gave us a dream, but its goals are not accomplished yet. We need to give one more chance to peace by relaunching international dialogue on security issues in order to build a true Euro-Atlantic and Eurasian security community without dividing lines. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency Vladimir Makej, and now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Lithuania, His Excellency Linas Linkevičius. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Allow me to start by congratulating our host and the Albanian team for the excellent work and leadership in OSCE this challenging time. It may seem that international political and legal environment is sufficient for peaceful coexistence. Nevertheless, it's worrisome to observe that some participating states have been consistently challenging the European security order and this organization's principles and values. This year is 7th year of war in temporarily occupied eastern Ukraine and the illegal annexation of Crimea. The situation in the Crimean Peninsula in particular is not improving. Russia keeps militarizing the region. The human rights violations of local Ukrainians and Crimean Tatars continue. So does Russia's passportization of the population in Donbass, artificially changing the character of the region. We welcome Ukraine's constructive approach and dedicated commitment to achieving the peace. We also welcome initiative to create international Crimean platform. We reiterate our support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders and urge international community to continue to stand firm regarding the non-recognition of Crimea's annexation. We call on Russia to demonstrate goodwill and seek political solution in full respect of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The tensions in the occupied Georgian regions of Abkhazia and Skhinvali, as well as recent flare-up over Nagorno-Karabakh, highlight the need for sustainable solution for protracted conflicts. The ceasefire between Armenia and Azerbaijan was an important step to prevent further loss of human rights. However, it must be noted that Russia sidelined other co-chairs of the OSCE Minsk group in this process, and here we would like to express our support to the mediation efforts within the Minsk group co-chairs format towards negotiated solution
to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Meantime, the conflict remains unsolved, just like other frozen conflicts in our neighborhood, which serve as a rule, as instruments of Russia's foreign policy. The political crisis in Belarus is another sore point in our region. Timely comprehensive report under the Moscow mechanism has confirmed the massive and systematic human rights violations and abuses committed by the Belarusian regime against its own citizens before, during, and after presidential election in August this year. As widespread human rights violations continue, I take this opportunity to once again call on the de facto authorities to reconsider their stance and put an end to violence against Belarusian people. I also encourage all the participating states and all of the international community to fully implement the recommendations provided in the report. Madam Chair, over the past year, the security challenges have become even more complex due to increased levels of propaganda, disinformation, and cyber attacks. In political military domain, we continue to face limited transparency, selective implementation and violations of international agreements. More than ever, we need to redouble our efforts to preserve and strengthen commonly agreed instruments. Lithuania invites all participating states, and Russia in particular, to engage and contribute constructively to Vienna document modernization for the sake of more trust, predictability, and security in Euro-Atlantic region. We value the Treaty to Open Skies as a legally binding instrument to promote military transparency and predictability. We regret to note that none of Russia's non-compliance issues, in particular as to the unilateral limitation of the flight distance over the Kaliningrad region, were resolved. Madam Chair, we are still far away from the perfect world. The security map of our region continues to face serious challenges and ongoing conflicts, but this is no excuse to give up trying. And finally, also let me wish big success to the incoming Swedish chairmanship. Also would like to express our support to future candidates to chairpersons in office, Poland and North Macedonia, and welcome and support the determination of Estonia to present its candidacy for the chairmanship in 2024. Thank you very much.
I thank His Excellency Linas Linkevicius, and now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Kyrgyzstan, His Excellency Ruslan Kazakbayev. You have the floor, sir.
Спасибо. Уважаемый господин председатель, уважаемые коллеги, хочу искренне поблагодарить действующего председателя ОБСЕ, уважаемого премьер-министра и министра европейских иностранных дел Албании господина Эди Рама и его команду за успешное председательство. Албанскому председательству приходилось достойно нести флаг нашей организации в очень непростое и сложное время. Безусловно, особые усилия председательства были направлены на достижение консенсуса вокруг назначения глав основных институтов нашей организации. Выражаем надежду на их эффективную деятельность в строгом соответствии с мандатами и учетом мнений всех государств-участников. Считаем необходимым главам институтам обратить внимание на дисбаланс представленности государств в исполнительных структурах ОБСЕ. Уважаемые коллеги, Кыргызская республика остается последовательной в построении подлинной демократической системы государственного устройства. Недавние события в стране укрепили убеждение правильности выбранного нами пути – формирование открытого общества, где единственным носителем власти является его народ. Свободолюбивый народ Кыргызстана никогда не свергнет с пути демократии. Процесс демократического и свободного развития в моей стране имеет необратимый характер. Кыргызская республика привержена ключевым демократическим принципам, верховенству права, защите прав и свобод человека, а также свободе слова и мирных собраний. Отличительной чертой современной политической жизни Кыргызстана является то, что созданы все условия для формирования сильного гражданского общества, политического плюрализма и непосредственного участия народа в построении будущего государства. В настоящее время в стране активно обсуждается вопрос совершенствования основ конституционного строя. С этой целью 20 ноября 2020 года образовано Конституционное совещание, в состав которого вошли представители научного сообщества, гражданского общества, неправительственной организации, правоведы, парламентарии, эксперты и другие. Работа совещания проходит максимально открыто и прозрачно для гражданского общества и средств массовой информации. Новый текст основного закона разрабатывается с широким участием всех политических сил и общественности. Впереди нас ожидают президентские выборы, назначенные на 10 января 2021 года, а также выборы парламента. Хочу подчеркнуть политическую волю и полную решимость исполняющих обязанности президента, правительства и всех политических сил страны обеспечить проведение справедливых и транспарентных выборов. Действующее правительство предпринимает все усилия, чтобы выборы прошли в соответствии с национальным законодательством, международными стандартами и обязательствами в рамках ОБСЕ. В этой связи готовы к честному сотрудничеству с БДИПЧ и парламентской ассамблеей ОБСЕ, представители которых уже прибывают в Кыргызскую республику для наблюдения за предстоящими президентскими выборами. Уважаемые коллеги, дорогие друзья, в целях соответствия чаяниям и требованиям народа, создания транспарентной и подотчетной системы государственного управления, улучшение предоставления услуг населению, руководство страны решительно настроено к проведению радикальных реформ во всех сферах жизни государства с привлечением независимых международных экспертов. В качестве основных приоритетов определена жесткая борьба с коррупцией и организованной преступностью, тщательный отбор и подготовка кадров государственной службы, реформа судебной и правоохранительной системы. Правительством взят курс на поиск принципиально новых методов организации системы государственного управления, которая бы отвечала требованиям времени и граждан стран. Верим, что подобный подход позволит изменить текущую парадигму и заложит фундамент для становления нового кыргызстанского общества, где будут соблюдаться принципы верховенства права, законности и правопорядка, защиты и продвижения прав человека и основных свобод, включая свободу слова. В данном контексте, обращаясь к ОБСЕ и странам-партнерам, оказать содействие в обмене лучшими практиками, способствующими надлежащему государственным и корпоративным управлениям, а также повышению транспарентности. Уважаемые дамы и господа, в имеющейся тяжелейшей глобальной конъюнктуре Кыргызстану необходима поддержка организации ее стран-участниц. Прежде всего, закрепление демократических завоеваний, обеспечение стабильности политического процесса, решение остро стоящих на повестке дня социально-экономических задач. Построение сильной и устойчивой демократии невозможно без помощи извне, в связи с чем призываю европейских партнеров не оставаться в стороне в этот судьбоносный для страны момент. Ваша поддержка Кыргызстану важна именно сейчас. Весьма актуальным является вопрос поддержания и укрепления торгово-экономических связей. Призываем государства-участники содействовать повышению взаимосвязанности на пространстве ОБСЕ путем обеспечения свободного и безопасного передвижения через границы людей, товаров, услуг и инвестиций в рамках принятых в ОБСЕ обязательств. Немаловажна и поддержка в реализации национальных программ и проектов, нацеленных на преодоление вызовов экономического характера. Рассчитываем, что офис координатора по экономической и экологической деятельности и программный офис ОБСЕ в Бишкеке будут вовлечены в данный процесс в будущем году. Уважаемые коллеги, наша традиционная декабрьская встреча в этом году проходит в онлайн-формате. Пандемия коронавируса внесла свои коррективы в работу организации. В этом свете поддерживаем и отмечаем своевременность и содержательность декларации по COVID-19. Считаем, что только на основе скоординированных и совместных действий мы сможем достичь положительных сдвигов. Ведь победить пандемию раз и навсегда возможно лишь обеспечив вакциной всех без исключения жителей планеты. В данном свете ключевое значение имеет обеспечение всеобщей доступности вакцин. Мы должны предупредить их чрезмерное приобретение малым количеством стран и установление над ним монополии. Призываю оказывать развивающимся странам помощь в приобретении вакцин для нивелирования угрозы коронавируса на пространстве ОБСЕ. Потому как в нашу эпоху взаимосвязанности одно слабое звено может повлечь за собой крах всей конструкции порядка. Дорогие друзья, текущий год во многих смыслах является юбилейным для нашей организации. Это и 45-я годовщина Хельсинкского заключительного акта, 30-я годовщина Парижской хартии, десятилетие Астанинской памятной декларации. Но, к сожалению, в месте прогресса или созидания мы видим процессы, которые усугубляют кризис внутри организации и на пространстве ОБСЕ. Кыргызская сторона по-прежнему считает, что все проблемы и вызовы в регионе ОБСЕ должны решаться посредством развития конструктивного диалога и на основе консенсуса. Задача восстановления доверия между странами-участницами ОБСЕ стоит как никогда остро. Для преодоления данного кризиса нам необходимо воздержаться от риторики разделительных линий и сделать шаг к восстановлению взаимного доверия. В заключение хотелось бы еще раз поздравить албанских друзей с успешным завершением председательства. Поздравляем министра иностранных дел Швеции, госпожу Анн Линде, с принятием ответственной миссии. Желаем успешного и плодотворного председательства в следующем году и вновь подтверждаем готовность Кыргызской Республики к полноценному активному участию в работе организации по всем направлениям. Благодарю за внимание.
I thank His Excellency Ruslan Kazakbayev, and now I give the floor to the next speaker, the distinguished representative of Latvia, His Excellency Edgar Rinkevich. The floor is yours, sir.
Dear colleagues, I would like to convey my sincere appreciation to the Albanian chairmanship for skillfully guiding work of this organization during a challenging year. Strengthening of the rules-based European security order based on the commitments enshrined in Helsinki Final Act and the Paris Charter must remain our priority. Unfortunately, we continue to witness breaches of international norms in wider Europe. The ongoing crisis in and around Ukraine remains one of the most critical security challenges. A long-term peaceful resolution of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine must remain a high priority for the OSCE. We support diplomatic efforts within the Normandy format and the trilateral contact group that foster full implementation of the Minsk agreements. The OSCE Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine must be continued in order to foster peace, stability and security in Ukraine. As Russia-backed armed formations in eastern Ukraine intentionally obstruct missions' operations, it is crucial that the mission has full, safe and unhindered access throughout Ukraine, including international border between Russia and Ukraine. Violation of sovereignty and territorial integrity by any country is and will remain unacceptable. Latvia will never recognize the illegal annexation of Crimea and Sevastopol. Resolution of the so-called protracted conflicts also is important for achieving security in the OSCE area. The OSCE should remain as principal platform for resolution of these conflicts. Concerning Nagorno-Karabakh, Latvia welcomes trilateral statement of Armenia, Azerbaijan and Russia. We encourage all parties to honor their commitments under this agreement. We reiterate our full support to the efforts of the OSCE Minsk Group to pursue long-term political settlement of this conflict. Continued borderization activities beyond the South Ossetian administrative boundary continue to infringe on territorial integrity of Georgia, and that is unacceptable. We will also continue to support the efforts to resolve the conflict in Transnistria through peaceful dialogue. Mr. Chairperson, military transparency and predictability are essential elements for the security in the OSCE area. The Treaty on Open Skies remains an important, legally binding agreement intended to provide a level of transparency among its states parties. Furthermore, the modernization of the Vienna document would constitute a strong signal about the sincerity of our collective readiness to ease tensions and to engage substantially in risk reduction. OSCE activities in preventing, investigating and combating illicit trafficking of small arms and light weapons and stockpiles of conventional ammunition must be strengthened. I would like to emphasize that gender equality is a cross-cutting issue in all OSCE dimensions, including security. Mr. Chairperson, there will be no long-term stability and security in the region without the observance of our commitments in the human dimension. Democracy, rule of law, and fundamental freedoms must be upheld by all participating states. We are deeply concerned about the dire states of civil society following the presidential elections in Belarus. The violence against post-election protests is not acceptable. The Moscow Mechanism fact-finding mission affirmed serious derogations from OSCE's human dimension commitments by the Belarus authorities. I call upon the participating states to take into consideration these findings and accordingly provide support to the civil society of Belarus wherever and whenever possible. Most importantly, we urge the Belarusian authorities to stop persecution of peaceful protesters, immediately release all unfairly detained, and engage in a genuine political dialogue with the opposition. Latvia will continue strong advocacy for media freedom and safety of journalists in Belarus and elsewhere. The only real solution to this crisis is a new, fair presidential election in the presence of international observers. Let me conclude by welcoming Sweden as the incoming chairpersonship in the OSCE. Latvia is looking forward to work closely with you on all issues of the OSCE agenda. Thank you very much.
I thank His Excellency Edgar Rinkevich, and now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of North Macedonia, His Excellency Bujar Osmani. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Chairman, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to express my gratitude to the Albanian chairmanship for the dedicated work in 2020 and to use this opportunity to commend the distinguished Prime Minister and OSCE Chairperson in Office, His Excellency Edi Rama, and his team for their unrelenting diplomatic efforts in addressing the challenges the OSCE region experienced in 2020 under the COVID-19 regime. I understand that we are on a path to reach consensus on our candidacy for the OSCE chairmanship in 2023. I would like to express our deep appreciation for the support and confidence of all OSCE participating states entrusted to my country, Republic of North Macedonia. It is a great honor and privilege, but also a great responsibility, which we fully acknowledge. I would also like to take this opportunity to congratulate on the decision to appoint the OSCE Secretary General and the heads of OSCE institutions, which will enable full functional capacity of our organization and renewed focus on tackling challenges in the region. You may count on our support in exercising your duties. We are meeting in unprecedented times. It is evident that the COVID-19 crisis further exacerbated some of the challenges already affecting us and at the same time added new ones. Therefore, we need the OSCE to be relevant and successful in all dimensions. Our institutions and mechanisms have important mandates to carry on. We should equally share the burden and work on reaching consensus on the most pressing issue in our organization. Often it is difficult to open new chapters of cooperation, of understanding, of building bridges Yet, if we need solutions so important for our people, this is the right avenue to take. So my message at this Ministerial Council meeting would be to encourage our delegations in Vienna to engage more vigorously and advance our work. Chairman, this year we commemorate the important anniversary of the milestone documents of our organization, the Helsinki Final Act, the Charter of Paris for New Europe, and the Copenhagen document. In this regard, let me reaffirm our full commitment to the core values and principles of the organization and our dedication to be an active contributor for the promotion of democracy, peace, security, stability, and confidence building among participating states. We fully support continued international diplomatic efforts within the Normandy format and the Trilateral Contact Group, which are aimed at reaching a political solution to the conflict. We share the views expressed by many here today, calling all sides to fully implement the Minsk agreement and honor their commitments in full in order to achieve a sustainable political solution to the conflict in line with the OSCE principles and commitments. All conflicts in the region should be resolved in accordance with the full respect of the OSCE principle and commitments. North Macedonia would like to underline the importance for the participating states to engage in the process of implementation and modernization of the Vienna document that is expected to improve our security, transparency, and promote mutual confidence. We also welcome the discussions in the structured dialogue process this year, and we note positively the convergence on risk reduction and threat perceptions. Although we are aware that there are differences addressing certain issues, it is important to continue this dialogue and thus contribute to reinforcing our mutual security. After decades of complex regional dynamic, open issues with neighbors, and internal turmoil, we managed to sail through turbulent waters and turn into an inspiring and hopeful example. A particular strength of our system is the authentic model of functional multi-ethnic and multicultural democracy. All this was made possible with strong dedication efforts within the society and bravery, visionary, and political leadership. But in spite of the unfortunate setback that we are facing again in the integration process, I would like to point out that we do not have an alternative for promoting good neighborly relations and achieving membership in the EU. We will work relentlessly to accomplish these goals. Finally, strengthening cooperation through dialogue and partnership built upon the Helsinki Final Act and continuing development of friendly relations among all OSCE member states is our starting point upon which we will work on our future program of activities for 2023. And before concluding, let me wish my Swedish colleague Ann Lind a successful presidency, and we look forward to working closely with them as with the Polish presidency. Also, I would like to express our support to Estonia for their bid to take up the OSCE chairmanship in 2024. I thank you very much for your attention.
I thank His Excellency Bujar Osmani, and now I give the floor to the next speaker, the distinguished representative of Canada, His Excellency François-Philippe Champagne. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Slovakia for presiding the session today. Dear colleagues, it's good to see you all. And on behalf of Canada, I'd like to thank our Albanian friends, including the chairperson, Rama, for hosting us today, and also for the incoming chair, our dear friends from Sweden. As most of you, I would have loved to visit your country and see you all in person, but I'm glad we were able to meet today to discuss very important issues. As many have said before me, this meeting takes place at a challenging time for the OSCE. Human rights abuses, instability, and serious geopolitical conflicts are taking place right when we need most to work together to recover from the pandemic and find solutions to the complex challenges we all face. 1 week from today, we will mark the Human Rights Day, the anniversary of the UN General Assembly adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Canada's commitment to basic human rights and democracy is a cornerstone of our foreign policy, notably in promoting and protecting gender equality, all-night freedoms, civil society, diversity, and obviously inclusion. Unfortunately, I would say, dear colleagues, we are seeing these fundamental principles being threatened. That's why the leadership of the OSCE is so crucially important, and we will continue to support the work that has started on the human rights front. On Ukraine, as we gather, we mark yet another year since Russia's invasion of Ukraine and attempted annexation of Ukrainian territory. This act remains an egregious violation of international law. Canada stands with Ukraine and supports its sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity, and we condemn Russia's action both in Crimea and in the Donbass. Canada supports diplomatic efforts to peacefully resolve the conflict in eastern Ukraine. That includes within the Normandy 4 framework and the trilateral contact group. Now let me say a few words on Belarus, and I saw the intervention from our colleague before. Canada also strongly believes that Alexander Lukashenko does lack the legitimacy to be the leader of Belarus. We continue to advocate for the implementation of the recommendations in the Moscow Mechanism report, including the release of those who are arbitrarily detained, meaningful dialogue between the authorities and the opposition towards a peaceful resolution, and the end to the violence which has been committed by the authorities and which is well documented. And I want to take also the opportunity to salute all these brave women that we've seen weekend after weekend, days after days, stepping up and standing up to the authorities to ask for democracy, freedom, and liberty. Canada supports the people of Belarus, as we have always done and we will always do. We will not remain silent in the face of violence and acts that undermine democracy. On Nagorno-Karabakh, we believe the involvement of the OSCE and the Minsk group is essential to bringing the conflict to a lasting, peaceful resolution. We will continue to support the work of the Minsk group, and we will follow the process, like many of you, very, very carefully. We must all work together to ensure civilians receive the humanitarian support they need and that their rights and security are respected, including the right of the displaced to return home. We expect the OSCE to play a key role in this regard, and Canada will always be willing to help. Now let me touch, Madam Chair, on arms control. Also, Canada remains committed to the conventional arms control framework that we have established in Europe. However, Russia's unwillingness to fully implement its commitments continues to undermine Europe's confidence and the security building efforts that have been undertaken. In conclusion, Madam Chair, I wish to reaffirm our commitment to working with all of you to strengthen human rights and bring about peace and security for all during one of the most challenging times of our generation. Let's all remember that stability and security are essential to ensure prosperity for everyone within our organization. With that, Madam Chair, I turn over the floor to you.
I thank His Excellency François-Philippe Champagne, and now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Malta, His Excellency Evarist Bartolo. You have the floor, sir.
Prime Minister Edi Rama, Minister Anna Lindh, dear colleagues. It is a pleasure and an honor for me to join you in this annual OSCE Ministerial meeting. This year, we commemorated 3 significant anniversaries: the 45th anniversary of the Helsinki Final Act, the 30th anniversary of the Paris Charter, and the 10th anniversary of the Astana Commemorative Declaration. These anniversaries are a testament of the vision and political willingness of our predecessors to create a platform for dialogue, cooperation, and collective security. These commemorations instigate us to reflect on what more can be done to make the OSCE stronger and more effective in the face of the current security challenges. At times, we might forget the reasons why we brought this organization into being, and that it remains as significant today as it was 45 years ago. Oftentimes, we fail to engage in real and effective dialogue. We hear each other, but may not listen. We lack the courage of trusting each other or showing the necessary political will to compromise and find solutions. It is as if we have given up on patient diplomacy and have gone back to the trench warfare of a century ago. The OSCE is a consensus-based organization, but consensus and agreement have become rare these days. It is understandable that each country has its own priorities. However, we cannot let our differences diminish the core objectives of this organization, our shared objective, the quest for a more secure region. Otherwise, we risk rendering our organization irrelevant and our countries and our region more insecure. On a positive note, we have finally addressed the impasse regarding the top 4 OSCE positions. Allow me to commend the Albanian chairmanship and the group of friends for their professionalism in successfully handling this process, and to extend on behalf of my country our best wishes to the newly appointed Secretary General, the representative on freedom of the media, the High Commissioner for National Minorities, and the Director of the Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. I hope that this decision will pave the way for further consensus within the OSCE. As we speak about unity, we cannot ignore the value of effective multilateralism. It is detrimental when unilateral actions are sought in violations of the fundamental principles of the OSCE. The current COVID-19 pandemic is without doubt an additional unprecedented burden on our global security, on the economy, as well as on the health framework. As horrible as the pandemic is, it is also a wake-up call that prompts us all to understand that our assumptions and approaches have to change, and that division is a danger to everyone. The COVID-19 pandemic is also an ideal opportunity to fully embrace the innovative opportunities offered by digitalization, while mitigating any possible negative outcomes by striving for more cooperation on cybersecurity and by ensuring that no one is left behind. Excellencies, it is paramount that we enable the OSCE to play a pivotal role in conflict prevention and conflict resolution. It is with dismay that in addition to the conflict in and around Ukraine, we also witnessed an escalation of violence in Nagorno-Karabakh this year. The OSCE has played a valuable role in the mediation efforts, and the strive to achieving a lasting peace may be constructively addressed in OSCE-led negotiations and initiatives under the auspices of the Minsk co-chairs. Meaningful peace goes beyond the signature of accords and treaties by state leaders. It needs to be sustained also at the grassroots levels through people-to-people contacts and academic exchanges. The OSCE would also benefit from increased intercultural and interfaith dialogue to foster peace and to galvanize action against conflicts and extremism. It is only by coming together as an alliance of civilizations that we can achieve lasting peace in our region. Indeed, in our efforts to move towards a better world, or rather to save our planet, it will not suffice to urgently address the climate as well as the environmental emergency, if at the same time we do not invest all our efforts to uphold each other's humanity and different belief, as reflected in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In the Helsinki Final Act, our predecessors agreed to enhancing relations with the non-participating Mediterranean states to increase mutual confidence so as to promote security and stability in the Mediterranean region as a whole. 45 years later, we are still far from achieving the desired outcomes. Last year's decision to change the name from Mediterranean Contact Group to Mediterranean Partners for Cooperation Group is a laudable step forward. It is now up to us to ensure that the elevated status of the group is translated into a more tangible cooperation with our Mediterranean neighbors. Excellencies, as I draw to a close, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to the Albanian chairmanship for its excellent work during its tenure, while assuring Sweden of Malta's support and well wishes for the coming year. The current unprecedented circumstances we gather in are a mere proof of how fast security challenges can evolve and should indeed serve as a motivation for all of us to be stronger in our resolve to deepen our cooperation towards our collective security. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency Evariste Bartolo and Excellencies, dear colleagues. Just to note, after agreement with the chairmanship and with respect to the time, the session will be closed today after next two statements, which is Bosnia and Herzegovina and Austria. So now I give the floor to the next speaker on the list, the distinguished representative of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Her Excellency Bisera Turkovic. You have the floor, Madam.
Thank you, dear Chairperson, Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. To begin with, I would like to express our appreciation to the Albanian chairmanship in office, especially for their dedication, pragmatism, and innovation in the past year. And I wish to congratulate them for successful leadership of the organization in this unpredictable and challenging period. After the OSCE faced an important leadership crisis, the Albanian chairmanship had to take upon and carry on even harder load. We applaud them for their tremendous efforts and success in resolving the obstacles and for keeping the organization on tracks. Their achievements are acknowledged and deeply valued and will certainly motivate other countries of our region to consider taking this demanding role in future. I use this opportunity to extend my sincere congratulations to the newly elected leadership of the OSCE, namely the Secretary General, Madame Schmidt, the Director of ODIHR, the Mekashi, High Commissioner for the National Minorities, Mr. Rahmanov, and Special Representative for the Media, Madame Ribeiria. I want to reassure them that they can count on Bosnia and Herzegovina's support in carrying out their task. There are several things I would like to reflect upon in my interventions. Bosnia and Herzegovina welcomes the engagement of the OSCE in the peaceful resolution of conflicts and emphasizes the need to respect the norms of international law, the UN Charter, the Paris Charter, and the Helsinki Final Document. Bosnia and Herzegovina is very concerned about the protracted and unresolved frozen conflicts in the OSCE region. We call all sides to negotiate and find a maturely acceptable solution, fully in accordance with the international law and in compliance with the OSCE rules and procedures. We support the OSCE in facilitating a peaceful solution to the conflicts in Georgia and Nagorno-Karabakh, where the peace processes need to be empowered in order to achieve more results and direct benefits for people concerned. We take note on comprehensive ceasefire agreed on November 10th between Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Russia. We support the co-chairs of the OSCE Minsk Group in searching for sustainable, long-term solution based on the principles of the Helsinki Final Act. Even though the fighting has stopped, the humanitarian situation is worrisome and it becoming more complicated as the winter approaches. We underline the urgency of humanitarian action commending all states contributing to ICRC and other actors on the ground. In the present evolving security environment, challenged by violent extremism that leads to terrorism, transnational organized crime, and trafficking in human beings, the security sector needs to be able to step up and find appropriate resolutions. We call for stronger partnership between international organizations, states, but also with an inclusive approach toward private sector and civil society to reinforce our ability to counter the said transitional threats. But we must not forget the prerogative for any other action, the urgent need to implement our commitments. This year showed that economic and environmental issues bring us closer together more than ever before or by any other portfolio of our work. In situation when the organization is facing serious conceptual problems, it is always opportune to create synergies and promote security and economic growth by preventing corruption. This could be done by using innovation, transparency, and other digital tools. We reaffirm that protection of the environment, sustainable management of natural resources, and preventing illegal activities that damage the environment are the most pressing issues that require our attention. The respect of rule of law, human rights, and fundamental freedoms are at core of the OSCE notion of comprehensive security. Unfortunately, these values are increasingly in retreat and under pressure throughout the OSCE region. Bosnia and Herzegovina remains a strong supporter of the OSCE autonomous institutions and field presence, as they are irreplaceable in providing the support to us, the participating states, in upholding and implementing the OSCE's commitments. Over the past 6 years, the OSCE has been faced with the biggest conflict crisis in its history after the conflict in former Yugoslavia. However, it is encouraging that the situation in and around Ukraine seems more promising compared to last year. Bosnia and Herzegovina strongly supports the work of Special Monitoring Mission in Ukraine. As its third largest contingent, we call sides to enable freedom of movement and provide full security to all SMMs monitor. However, it is still disappointing to witness the failure to seize opportunities to achieve some progress in trilateral working group created by the continued commitment to the ceasefire lasting from June this year. We strongly believe that a sustainable de-escalation in eastern Ukraine is possible only through a sincere display of commitment and political will. We would therefore like to reiterate our full support for the diplomatic efforts and encourage the sides to join the discussions in the TCG constructively and good faith, which will pave the way for concrete positive outcomes. We also welcome the overall progress in all these engagement areas, including opening the new entry-exit checkpoints in Zolote and Shastia of the Lushensk region, and all other local activities that could have a positive and significant impact to civilians residing near the contact line. Ladies and gentlemen, I will use the remaining couple of minutes to talk about my own country. I wish to highlight that Bosnia and Herzegovina's authorities are consistently showing determination in pursuing the reform path, being aware that addressing the socio-economic needs of the citizens are the top priority. This September, the Council of Ministers adopted, better yet, renewed its war crime strategy. There is also a consensus on the need for further political reforms and the upgrade of the political and electoral system in order to finally set the country on its fast track in the EU integration process. However, modalities on how to achieve this goal are still in the making. The final solution will probably require proper legal and political balance. The agreement made by the elected political representatives on provision that will enable local election in city of Mostar in 10 days, the first time after almost 12 years, should be considered as a turning point, the present reforms stalemate. Finally, as the Southeast Europe country, Bosnia and Herzegovina warmly welcomes the application from North Macedonia for the OSCE chairmanship in 2023, as well as the Estonian application for 2024. We very much welcome the incoming Swedish chairmanship. I sincerely believe we do need to go back to basics and emphasize the fundamental task of the OSCE to defend the European security order and to uphold the OSCE comprehensive concept of security. I thank you for your kind attention.
I thank Her Excellency Bisera Turkovic, and now I give the floor to the last speaker on my list today, the distinguished representative of Austria, His Excellency Alexander Schallenberg. You have the floor, sir.
Sehr geehrter Herr Vorsitzender, sehr geehrte Kolleginnen und Kollegen. Wir alle wissen, 2020 ist absolut kein normales Jahr in vielerlei Hinsicht. Es ist ein Jahr, in dem wir alle unter den weitreichenden Folgen einer Pandemie leiden. Ein Jahr, das uns im OSZE-Raum und darüber hinaus mit aufflammenden Konflikten und Krisen in Atem hält. Und ein Jahr, in dem am 2. November der feige islamistische Terror auch Österreich heimgesucht hat. Wie Sie alle werde auch ich heute lieber mit Ihnen in Tirana persönlich zusammengetroffen. Leider hat uns die Covid-19-Pandemie nach wie vor fest im Griff. Und sie torpediert neben vielen anderen Eingriffen in unserem beruflichen und privaten Alltag eines der wichtigsten Werkzeuge in der Außenpolitik, die bereichernden persönlichen Gespräche. Umso wichtiger ist es, unsere Gesprächskanäle mit allen Mitteln offen zu halten. Denn wir sehen uns im OSZE-Raum mit zahlreichen Krisen konfrontiert. Diese dürfen nicht von der Pandemie überschattet werden. Allen voran der nach wie vor andauernde Konflikt in der Ostukraine und die illegale Annexion der Krim. Kriege und humanitäre Krisen lassen sich von einem Virus nicht beeindrucken. Sie kennen keinen Lockdown. In Belarus etwa erleben wir ein demokratiepolitisches Drama. Friedlich Demonstrierende werden von der Polizei gejagt. Willkürlich Verhaftete erleiden Gewalt. Internetdienste werden abgeschaltet und unabhängige Journalisten verfolgt. Der im Rahmen des Moskauer Mechanismus präsentierte Bericht über die systematischen Menschenrechtsverletzungen spricht eine ganz deutliche Sprache. Hier wird gerade ein neuer eiserner Vorhang aufgebaut. Die Menschen in Belarus aber verdienen es, dass ihre Stimme gehört wird, dass sie in einen echten, inklusiven, nationalen Dialog eingebunden werden und dass sie ihre politische Zukunft im Rahmen freier und fairer Wahlen selbst bestimmen können. Im Schatten der Pandemie sind auch alte Wunden wieder aufgeplatzt, wie etwa im Bergkarabach. Es ist gut, dass die Waffen endlich schweigen und sich die Konfliktparteien von der Logik des Schlachtfelds abwenden. Trotzdem sollten wir nicht naiv sein und glauben, dass nun alles gelöst sei. Der Konflikt könnte sehr schnell wieder aufflammen. Dazu bräuchte es nur einen Funken. Für uns bedeutet das, dass wir die Stabilisierung der Lage vor Ort vorantreiben müssen. Das Leiden der Zivilbevölkerung muss ein Ende haben und das religiöse und kulturelle Erbe in der Region gehört geschützt. Andererseits braucht es einen klaren internationalen Rahmen. Das bedeutet eine Rückkehr zum Verhandlungstisch unter Vermittlung der Co-Vorsitzenden der OSZE-Minsk-Gruppe. Nur so kann ein langfristiger Fahrplan in Richtung Konfliktlösung erstellt werden. Liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, in Wien genauso wie in Frankreich haben wir vor kurzem schmerzlich erlebt, wie schnell neben dem Covid-19-Virus auch das Virus des Hasses und der Menschenverachtung um sich greifen kann. Es verbreitet sich mit der Geschwindigkeit eines Gedankens. Wir müssen gemeinsam mit allen Mitteln des Rechtsstaates dagegen ankämpfen und dieser menschenverachtenden Ideologie den Nährboden entziehen. Ich sage es in aller Deutlichkeit. Dieser Kampf richtet sich nicht gegen Menschen einer bestimmten Religionsangehörigkeit oder Herkunft. Es ist ein Kampf zwischen Gut und Böse, zwischen jenen, die eine offene demokratische Gesellschaft wollen, in der die Würde jedes Einzelnen respektiert wird, und jenen wenigen, die dagegen ankämpfen. Liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, ein kurzer Blick auf die Weltkarte zeigt deutlich, dass wir derzeit geradezu mit einer Inflation an Krisen zu kämpfen haben. Die OSZE ist daher mehr denn je eine unverzichtbare Organisation. Und trotzdem habe ich das Gefühl, dass wir in dieser Organisation ständig gegen einen Erosionsprozess ankämpfen müssen. Eine Erosion des gegenseitigen Vertrauens, eine Erosion des Verständnisses für Multilateralismus und eine Erosion des Bewusstseins, dass Kompromissbereitschaft nicht mit Schwäche gleichzusetzen ist. Wir müssen diesen Trend umkehren. Ansonsten werden wir einen hohen Preis zahlen. An Sicherheit, an Frieden, an Entwicklung und letztlich am Menschenleben. Der in der Präambel zur Schlussakte von Helsinki formulierte Auftrag an uns alle ist gültiger denn je. Und ich zitiere: unter voller Berücksichtigung der Eigenart und Vielfalt ihrer Standpunkte und Auffassungen nach Möglichkeiten zu suchen, ihre Bemühungen zur Überwindung des Misstrauens und zur Vergrößerung des Vertrauens zu vereinigen, die Probleme, die sie trennen, zu lösen und zum Wohle der Menschheit zusammenzuarbeiten. Lasst uns diesen Auftrag wieder ins Zentrum unserer Arbeit stellen. Ich danke Ihnen.
I thank His Excellency Alexander Schallenberg and Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to close the second plenary session. We will resume our work tomorrow at 10 a.m. with the third plenary session under the chairpersonship of Sweden, when we will continue with the list of speakers. Please note that you will be able to join the meeting as of 9:30 a.m. The first speaker to be offered the floor tomorrow morning will be the delegation of Norway. The first day of the Tirana ministerial meeting is hereby closed. Super.